everybody. Good morning. Good morning. How are you? I hope y'all are having a blessed day. We are here for the second day of trial. Got my coffee. I'm a little hung up here. Got my coffee. It's an early morning for me, and I'm ready to go. Just wanted to welcome you. This is going to be an interesting day. I took 5 pages of notes yesterday. Oh my gosh, it was crazy, y'all. 5 pages. So I'm ready. I got my glasses today. Yay, 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 yay. But anyway, if you missed day 1, go back and watch my live from yesterday. Now, I do have to explain. I was in Native American gear because I was honoring the Gathering of Nations. So somebody was like, "What in the world?" Well, I was honoring the Gathering of Nations. I can do that. It's my channel. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Ada K. Thanks for joining me. And this thing isn't really cooperating this morning. I mean, I sat down. I flew in here, y'all. I literally flew in here and it was cold. So I threw this on. I don't know what the heck it's doing. I'll fix it in a minute. All right, y'all. We're going to catch up with what's going on in the court today. While I fidget with this, I'm getting stuck. This is not working well, y'all. How about if, there we go. That's better. That's better. Oh, okay. It was a little cold in my office this morning, so I had to throw it on. All right, y'all. So we're going to go ahead and hop on. We're going to hop into court. It was late this morning. Oh, thank you, Jesus. It was my understanding. There we go. I think it was my understanding that they were going to go half days in the afternoon, is what I heard from somebody. And well, they lied. They lied. So we'll just roll with the punches and see how things go. All right, y'all, let's get started.
Now sitting in the Gems Superior Court, in Boulder County of the North Court. Drawn near to your defendant, you shall be heard. Said Commonwealth comes to the court. Thank you. Court now in session.
Good morning.
Commonwealth versus Karen Reed, 22117.
Okay, good morning again, counsel. Good morning, Ms. Reed.
Good morning, jurors. I appreciate everybody's commute today. Took everyone, I'm sure, a lot longer than we all anticipated. But we thank you for being so confident. I do have to ask you those same 3 questions. Was everyone able to follow the instruction and refrain from discussing this case with anyone yesterday? Everyone said yes or nodded affirmatively. Were you also able to follow the instruction and refrain from doing any independent research or investigation into this case since we left yesterday?
How many people would admit
yes
that they
didn't? Affirmatively. Did anyone happen to see, hear, read anything about this?
Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining.
Everyone said no or shook their heads.
All right, thank you very much. Could we have Officer Saraff, please?
This way.
Morning.
Morning, Your Honor. So remind you're still under oath.
Ross?
Yes, sure.
Okay, y'all, we're on defense's cross-examination.
All right, Mr. Jackson.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Coffee.
Good morning, Officer Saraff. Is there anything that you would like to change or amend or modify about your testimony yesterday, which you found out overnight?
No.
Did you discuss your testimony with any person between the time you got off the stand yesterday and coming back to the courtroom?
No.
Are you sure about that?
Officer Saraff, I want to ask you a couple of questions about something called the dispatch log. You know what a dispatch log is?
Yes.
Oh, they got something.
What is a dispatch log? Can you describe it for the jurors?
Just notes saying what time calls come in and sometimes a short synopsis of what happened on the call.
It's an official document generated by the Canton Police Department, correct?
That's correct.
And it's kept in the ordinary course of business?
Yes,
It's created at or near the time of the event that it's recording,
yes.
and it's supposed to be accurate.
Yes,
Is that yes?
yes, yes,
Okay.
sir.
And in fact, what it has is the dispatch details of the event that's in question. Whatever officers show up, what time they show up, the order in which they show up, the location to which they're dispatched, things of that nature, correct?
Yes.
Have you looked at the dispatch log in this case?
No, I have not.
May I approach you on it?
Yes.
This has been pre-marked as Exhibit 27. Take a glance at that and tell me if you recognize that document.
Yes, sir.
How do you recognize it?
It looks like the log in question.
Oh, okay, so that's the dispatch log for what date?
The 29th.
Do you see your name somewhere on that dispatch log?
Yes,
To the right, one of the three officers that was called to the scene.
yes,
And that looks like the dispatch log for the call out that you were testifying about yesterday. Is that right?
that's correct.
May I approach you on it?
Yes.
May I publish this as we
Yes.
discuss it? That is really small font. May I approach one more time?
Yes.
This is not an eye contest.
That I would not.
I should say. Oh, look at that. The magic of technology. All right. You can either look up on the screen or look at the dispatch log that's in front of you. I'll try to look at the one on the screen, but my eyes aren't that great either. If you look to the right, there appear to be 3 entries for the dispatch of the officers that were on the scene about which you testified yesterday, correct?
Yes, sir.
And in fact, it has, this dispatch log shows that you, and then Officer Mullaney, and then Sergeant Good all arrived to 32 Fairview that morning within 7 seconds of each other, correct?
That's what it says, yes.
It actually has Officer Mullaney arriving first at 6:09:26. You see that?
Yes.
And you see that it also has 3 seconds later at 6:09:29, you arriving. Is that right?
6:29 it says. Excuse me, it's 6:09, yes.
6:09 and 29 seconds.
Yes, I'm sorry, yep.
That's okay. And then it has Sergeant Good arriving 4 seconds after you at 6:09 and 33 seconds, correct?
Sure, yep.
So all 3 of you, according to the official document generated by Canton Police Department for this event, has Officer Mullaney arriving first, you arriving second, Sergeant Good arriving third, all within 7 seconds of each other, correct?
Correct.
That is completely false, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah, you've looked at your dispatch, your dash cam, correct? And clearly, we saw it yesterday. You arrive and there's nobody else on scene.
Correct.
That was at about 6:10 a.m. that you arrived, correct?
About that, yes.
And then Officer Mullaney actually arrives after you about 6:11 a.m. Is that right?
Yes.
And Sergeant Good does not arrive, according to your own dash cam, until about 6:16, a little after 6:15.
Yep.
All right. So right off the bat, the official Canton Police Department dispatch log, one of the first documents generated in any investigative event, that's completely wrong, right?
The times are, yes.
Well, the times and the orders, right? I mean, not only did Officer Mullaney not arrive first, you arrived first.
That's
and
correct.
then he arrived.
Sure,
So that's 2 things that are wrong about just that, correct?
sure.
And then it has Sergeant Good arriving 4 seconds after you, which is also incorrect.
Yep.
He didn't arrive until about 6 or 7 minutes after you, right?
Sure.
All right. Have you reviewed this document in the past?
Yeah? No,
You've never seen the dispatch log?
no.
Did you ever seek to make sure that the dispatch log that's so important and so vital in an investigation was actually accurate before it was turned over
Take
to
a
the
note,
defense?
John.
No, I didn't.
All right. But without that dispatch log, without your dash cam, we would be relying on your dispatch log to be true and accurate. Is that right?
Other than what I'm saying that what happened, correct.
And do you think it's accurate otherwise?
Not good.
Not in order, no, it's not. Not in order, no.
Other than
And
the
time.
order and the time that the officer's responding, is it correct in all other respects in your mind?
Can you rephrase,
Sure.
say it one more time?
Let's take away the order and the time that the officers responded. Ignore that.
Mhm.
Is the dispatch log otherwise accurate?
Yes.
Take a look at the left-hand column where it's highlighted in green. What's that address?
Highlighting green?
On the screen, it's
Oh,
highlighted.
I'm sorry.
I'm like,
I don't have the document.
that's okay. It says 32 Fairview.
Did you arrive to 32 Fairview Road?
No,
You arrived to 34 Fairview Road,
that's correct. Yep,
So that even the location on the dispatch log is faulty, is that right?
sure, yep.
May I approach you?
Yes.
Yep.
Whoa, the log is wrong in 3 different places. Oh,
You testified at a grand jury in April
hello.
of
I need to pause
2022,
when that
correct?
happens.
I did.
At that grand jury, do you remember telling the grand jurors what address you actually responded to?
The lights, please.
Don't recall. Probably, what I said in the grand jury.
Refresh your recollection if you took a quick glance
Sure.
at a copy of your grand jury testimony.
They need to pause when that
May I
happens.
approach you?
Yes.
Oh, that's close.
Thank you.
I guess we're used to it.
Officer Saraff, I've done you the favor of highlighting a page on page 9. Where did you indicate to the grand jurors that you actually arrived?
It says 35 Fairview.
Ooh.
I know what it says. I'm asking if it refreshes your recollection that you actually testified under oath that you responded to 35 Fairview Road.
Yes.
And that is incorrect as well, isn't it?
Yes.
May I approach you?
Yes.
Have you reviewed any of the other officers' reports that relate
Wow,
to
y'all, this is
your
starting out
dispatch
snappy.
out to the location that you've been testifying to?
No, I did not.
Did you ever review Sergeant Good's report?
No.
Are you aware that have you ever discussed with Sergeant Good that he wrote in his official report that you responded to 32 Fairview Road?
No.
And of course, we just
You
talked
can't
about the fact that
testify
the
to that.
dispatch log lists
Good
32
morning,
Fairview Road
Kevin.
and not 34 Fairview Road, correct?
Correct.
So none of the initial police reports, not the dispatch log, not your police report, apparently not Sergeant Good's, list 34 Fairview Road as the actual location where you responded that morning, correct?
As far as I know, yes. Yes, sir.
Was there an effort
morning.
on your part or anybody else's, to your knowledge, to mask the actual address of Brian Albert's house as 34 Fairview Road?
No. No.
All those were just mistakes,
Yes.
over and over and over.
Yes.
I'm
When you
away.
made contact with
Yeah, you're
the
so kind.
victim and the women that you described
Threw the
yesterday,
spackle on.
did you see any evidence?
Okay, I gotta stop there for a second because I can't. Do y'all realize what just happened here? This defense attorney came out and it's like a little boxing match. He came out, he didn't just go chunk. He just went choosh. Oh my gosh. So, just to catch everybody up. The dispatch log shows that Sheriff Saraff, the guy testifying, showed up at 6:08:29. Mullaney showed up at 6:09:26, and Good showed up at 6:09:33. That's the dispatch log. And in fact, the dash cam of this officer shows that this officer showed up at 6:10, Mullaney showed up at 6:11, and Good shows up at 6:16. The dispatch log shows they showed up within 7 seconds of each other. So you've got issues already. Then the dispatch log said, all right, that the address was 32 Fairview not 34 Fairview. This gentleman stated that he said 34. Then the officer, which is on the stand, states at the grand jury hearing it was 35 Fairview. They are already coming out punching with the discrepancies between what is being testified and what is documented and what is shown on dash cam, which are three different things. Y'all get ready. It is going to be a ride, and here we go.
That any of the women had been engaged in life-saving measures.
Yes,
What did you see?
it appeared that Karen Reed was doing mouth-to-mouth on John O'Keefe.
You saw
Oh, snap it. I apologize, y'all.
by the Commonwealth.
Yes,
Matter of fact, Mr. Lally was what happened, correct?
that's correct.
Their approach?
Yes,
Oh, my bad, y'all.
yes.
Okay, I hit a button.
Yep. Discussed with Sergeant Good that he wrote in his official report that you responded to 32 Fairview Road.
No,
Oh, that's the
And
other.
of course, we just talked about the fact that the dispatch log lists 32 Fairview Road and not 34 Fairview Road, correct?
correct.
So none of the initial police reports, not the dispatch log, not your police report, apparently not Sergeant Good's, list 34 Fairview Road as the actual location where you responded that morning, correct?
As far as I know, yes. Yes, sir.
Was there an effort on your part or anybody else's, to your knowledge, to
By the way,
mask
he
the actual
stated
address
that there
of Brian
was
Albert's house as 34
two
Fairview
women,
Road?
three
No.
women
All
standing,
those are
and
just
then he
mistakes.
said Karen Reed
Yes.
was doing mouth to
Over
mouth.
and over and over.
When you
Yes,
show up, they were all three kneeling next to him.
When you made contact with the victim and the women that you described yesterday, did you see any evidence that any of the women had been engaged in life-saving measures?
yes.
What did you see?
It appeared that Karen Reed was doing mouth-to-mouth on John O'Keefe.
You saw, I don't want to get too graphic, but you saw blood on her face?
Yes, I did.
You saw blood on his face?
That's correct.
You saw blood in her hair?
No, I didn't see anything.
You didn't notice that?
No, I didn't notice that.
Okay. But certainly blood on her face from having engaged in some sort of CPR activity?
Yes,
Mouth-to-mouth resuscitation, you said?
it looked like it, yes.
Okay. You also saw Carrie Roberts seemingly assisting with chest compressions. Is that right?
Objection? I'm asking a question.
Sorry?
Objection? There's just no
No,
question.
no, he can ask it. The question hasn't been asked yet. Finish the question.
Thank you, Your Honor. Did you also see Carrie Roberts seemingly assisting in chest compressions?
I don't remember who exactly it was, but it appeared that somebody was doing
What about
purchase.
the third woman, Jennifer McCabe?
They were all around the body.
Did you see Jennifer McCabe ever engage with John O'Keefe as he lay on the ground and assist in any life-saving measures?
I
Did
don't-
you witness that?
I don't recall.
But you do recall my client engaged.
Yes,
Isn't it true that Jennifer McCabe pulled you aside while my client and Carrie Roberts stayed with John O'Keefe and began engaging you in a conversation?
yes,
And she was providing some sort of a narrative to you, correct?
correct.
While the other two women are trying to save John O'Keefe's life, she's talking to you.
For brief seconds, I would say.
That's
For brief
correct.
seconds?
Yes.
You saw that the dash cam video was those several minutes on the dash cam video where she's standing and having a conversation with you. Are those the brief seconds?
I don't know what time frame you're talking about.
Right after you got there.
Right after I got there.
Correct. Did you ever see Jennifer McCabe do anything physically to help John O'Keefe?
No, I didn't see anything.
Did Jennifer McCabe offer to you during that brief seconds that you described, this narrative that she was having, this conversation she was having with you? Did she ever offer the fact that she was standing in front of her sister's house?
No,
Did she ever offer the fact that her brother-in-law, who lives in the house, is a first responder?
objection.
Sustained.
Were you apprised at any time while you were out there that the homeowner was a first responder?
Objection.
Sustained.
Ooh. I wish I could do counters. I can't. I need to bring the camera down for a second.
Based on your observations between Karen Reed and Jennifer McCabe, which one of those women appeared to be more focused on trying to save John's life in the moment?
Objection.
I'll allow it.
Can you repeat the question, sir?
Between Karen Reed and Jennifer McCabe, which one of those two women, based on your observations, appeared to you to be more focused on physically trying to save John O'Keefe's life in the moment?
At that point, it was Karen Reed.
You would agree with me, Officer Saraff, that in any investigation, details matter, accuracy matters, correct?
Sure.
Reports are written in police investigations in order to memorialize observations, things heard, seen, experienced by the officers, correct?
Yes.
And generally speaking, you're trained to write those reports and memorialize those observations as quickly as possible so that things are fresh in your memory.
Correct.
You don't want to write a report about an incident that you respond to today, 2 years from now.
No.
As a matter of fact, you're trained exactly the opposite. When you respond to a scene, somewhat important, you need to get it down on paper as quickly as possible for detail and accuracy, right?
Yes.
You did, in fact, write a report, a supplemental report for this investigation, where you laid out your observations of that morning, correct?
That's correct.
These are called incident reports, correct?
Yes.
I'm holding what appears to be a multi-page document that is entitled an incident report. May I approach?
Yes.
Take a look at the tabbed page
Mhm.
and tell me if you recognize what's on that page.
Thank you for joining me this morning. It's already been spicy. I wish I had a spicy meter.
I'm sorry.
Do you recognize that? All I'm asking you is,
Oh,
you
yes.
recognize that as your report?
Yes, yes, sir.
Okay.
Sorry.
Did you write that?
Yes, sir.
When did you write that?
I believe the morning of,
So that would be January 29th,
that's correct.
a little bit later in the morning after you left the scene.
Yes,
And you were reflecting back on what had just happened minutes or hours before, correct?
Yep.
And you were trying to be as truthful as possible, correct?
yes,
You were trying to be as accurate as possible,
yes,
as comprehensive as possible,
yes,
and as thorough as possible.
yes,
You wrote in that report, quote, Karen Reed kept screaming, "Is he dead? Is he dead?" She was severely distraught and not able to tell me what happened. Correct?
that's correct.
Fair approach.
Yes.
There was no limit to the amount of words that you could put on the page, correct?
No,
Matter of fact, there's a ton of white space. It's left unutilized, right?
that's correct.
You could have taken as much time as you wanted to in writing this report. Is that right?
Sure.
And is that yes?
Yes,
There was no reason to abbreviate anything. Is that right?
no,
And you tried to be as accurate as you possibly could in that moment
yes,
and put everything down in that report that reflected what you experienced and what you observed and what you heard that morning, correct?
yes.
And the
So why
only
did he
statement
not
you
document
attribute
that she
to my
was doing
client
CPR?
on that morning, just hours after the incident or minutes after the incident, was she kept repeating, "Is he dead?" Correct?
Yes,
You were interviewed by Michael Proctor the next day, weren't you?
I don't know what day it was, but. I think it
Would it
was-
refresh your recollection to take a look at a report?
Sure.
May I approach you on it?
Yes.
Take a look at that report that's dated March 15, but reflects an interview on January 30, and then tell me if you recognize it.
Looks like his report.
Okay, that's that's Trooper Proctor's report of an interview that he did with you, correct?
Yes,
And if you look on the second page, paragraph about what you stated to Trooper Proctor.
that's highlighted? Is
I
that-
highlighted it for you, yes.
Yes,
Okay. Did you tell Trooper Proctor, let me withdraw that, ask it a different way. Were you trying to be as thorough and comprehensive with Trooper Proctor as you were in your own report?
yes,
You weren't holding anything back in that interview, correct?
no,
You wanted to be as truthful and as honest as you possibly could?
Yep.
And as comprehensive as you possibly could, correct?
yes,
You told Trooper Proctor that you could, quote, hear Karen Reed continually state, "Is he dead?" as the paramedics treated the victim. Officer Saraff then seen Karen inside her friend's vehicle, correct?
correct.
So the only statement you attributed to my client the day after this incident was those 3 words, "Is he dead?" that she continually repeated. Is that right?
Yes.
Thank you. May I approach?
Yes.
So what they're saying is that this gentleman's repeated "Is he dead? Is he dead?" comment
And the
that
2
Karen Reed
times that
made
you were asked to
influenced
reflect back on exactly what
investigation
happened
in
that
a wrongful
morning
manner.
on January 29th and January 30th, both times you attributed only 3 words to my client having been repeated continually in her distraught state. "Is he dead?" Right?
Yes,
And she
I've
wasn't
seen
saying
that
that
a lot
calmly,
on
I'm
scene.
assuming.
That's not
Matter of fact, you
uncommon.
used the word she was severely distraught. Is that right?
that's correct.
When you say severely distraught, we saw part of that on your dash cam. She was emotional,
Yes,
upset,
yes,
Justifiably,
on John.
girlfriend.
yes,
trying to save his life,
yes.
and asking, what was the question that she asked?
Is he dead?
Is he dead?
Over and over and over, correct?
That's
Correct.
not uncommon. I've heard mothers, sisters, aunts, uncles, siblings,
Then you were
spouses
asked to
do the same
testify
thing
in
on a
April
car
of
accident.
2022, April 14th of
Nothing
2022,
new.
at a state-run
That
grand
does
jury
not shock me.
by the Commonwealth.
Yes,
Matter of fact,
Are you
Mr.
hearing
Lally
me,
was
Miss
the
Kevin? Do I
fine
need to speak
prosecutor who was
louder?
asking you the questions, correct?
yes,
Between the time,
Okay, I'm speaking over, and I'm told sometimes that's hard for people to hear. I also have noticed that with other YouTubers that while streaming, the mics compete. This is not uncommon. I have seen this many, many times on accident scenes and other situations as a chaplain where the family members will, while we're doing CPR, while they're being airlifted, while all of this chaos is ensuing on a scene, and they are often asking, crying, screaming, "Is he alive? Is he dead? Is he going to make it?" You're working on lip reading, so oh, it sounds good. So good job, babe. Uh, so understand that the prosecution has put a ton of emphasis on that statement throughout this entire case. And that does not mean she's guilty. Now, I'm not saying she's not. I don't know anything. I am the alternate juror. I'm looking at this on both sides of the coin. But if she's performed CPR and they come and take over, that is not an unusual thing to hear. So to me, the prosecution has blown that part of it blown it way up. As a juror, with my knowledge, I would not put any weight on that. Okay, let's get going.
you wrote your report on January 29th, and you gave a statement officially on January 30th. Between that time and when you testified in April of 2022, do you have any meetings with anybody from the Massachusetts State Police?
no,
Do you have any meetings with Mr. Lally?
no,
Did Mr. Lally put you on the stand without talking to you first?
no. For this trial?
Nope. I'm just, the dates in question are up to April 14th, 2022 at grand jury.
I don't recall.
You don't recall if you met with either Mr. Lally or any of his contemporaries to discuss your potential testimony? I don't recall meeting with him for that. No, one time I met with him in his office was a couple of weeks ago with this. In preparation for this testimony?
Correct.
But your testimony now is that he didn't meet with you or you did not connect with him to discuss your testimony before the April grand jury?
I don't recall.
Yeah, he did.
When you did testify
That's bull crap.
in that grand jury,
No, that I don't believe that one bit.
you changed your story, didn't you?
No.
You believe you testified completely consistently at that grand jury as you had in your report?
I testified for what I remember what happened, sir.
I see. Was your memory better in April than it was minutes or hours after the event?
Was it better?
Was it better or worse?
I don't know. I don't know.
Do you think your memory gets better as time goes on?
Not usually, no.
Dang it, I
No,
wish I
it's
had
the
a
opposite,
nail
isn't
it
it?
sound.
Yes.
Memories get foggy, they fade.
Yes.
Which is why you write reports the day of the incident, if you can, correct?
Yes.
That's a good point.
Do you remember what you testified to at the grand jury in April of 2022?
The whole thing?
No,
Oh,
sorry, that was a bad question on my part. Just as it relates to statements attributed to my client,
Yes.
what was your exact testimony in April of 2022?
I'd have to look at my,
Would it refresh your recollection if you saw a copy of your
sure.
grand jury transcript? May I approach?
Yes.
Okay, Maud, I may
18.
have to pop in and out today more than normal. My son has got an
Let me know
appointment
once
and
you,
I've got to watch the business.
Remember, once you
If I pop out,
review
it's
that, tell
only
me if
going to
that
be for
refreshes your
5 minutes
recollection.
at a time.
Yes, it does.
In fact, on April 14th, 2022, months after this event, for the first time, you said, quote, and these are your words, tell me if I get them right. She, this is my fault. I don't know. She said, I can't believe this happened. I mean, she kept asking if he was going to die, if he's dead. And, I just basically said, we're doing the best that we could, end quote.
That's correct.
May I approach?
Yes.
So in April of 2022, for the first time, you attributed the phrase, "This is my fault. I can't believe this happened," to my client, correct?
Thank you,
That's correct.
But
Kevin.
nowhere in your official report did you say that.
That's correct.
Y'all
And
will be
nowhere
receiving a
in your
blessing
interview
real
with
soon.
Super
I
Proctor
have
the next day
mail.
did you say that.
That's correct.
You think that was a pretty important omission on your part?
It was an oversight.
An oversight
Yes, sir.
that a woman whom you made contact with, standing over the body of a fallen police officer, said to you, "This is my fault." Just missed that one. Yes?
Yes, I missed it. Yeah, I didn't write it down.
And then, of course, you testified yesterday and your statement changed again, right?
I don't
Remember what you said yesterday, these jurors?
remember word for word.
Well, I wrote it down. Let's see if this helps. Yesterday, you said, that my client said, quote, "It's all my fault. I did this," end quote.
Yes.
Remember that? Is that yes?
That,
Yes, sir.
that's got to come off her mic.
But you didn't say that at the grand jury.
No.
And you didn't say that to Trooper Proctor.
No, sir.
And you didn't put it in your report.
That's correct.
If you were to testify in another 2 or 3 weeks, I think her statement would just keep evolving.
Objection.
Sustained.
Now I want to shift gears for a second and talk about what Ms. Reed actually said that morning. You said that you reviewed your dash cam video, correct?
Once.
Do you remember when you arrived, one of the first things out of your mouth was the question, what happened?
Yes.
That would be a natural question to
Sure.
ask,
Yep.
right? You assess the scene and assess the situation.
Absolutely.
And you would want to listen closely to what that answer was, correct?
Sure.
Ms. Reed did in fact answer you, didn't she?
I don't recall what she said.
She said, quote, my boyfriend, I left him and he never came home, end quote. Correct?
I don't know. I don't recall.
You agree, we've already agreed, that details matter in any investigation. They
Absolutely.
certainly matter in this investigation, correct?
Yes, sir.
I'd like you to take a look at what's been pre-marked as Exhibit 26.
It's okay, Miss Kevin. We can rock it. No big deal. Yeah.
This is about the 3:50 runtime. I'm not looking at the actual I'm not looking at the actual time of day over here. I'm looking at the runtime, which is down at the bottom. So if the space, you can put this up. Can you pause it? Just to orient everybody, does this appear to be your dash cam?
Yes, sir.
Same dash cam you were looking at yesterday?
Yes.
Okay, let's go ahead and play this space. Pause it. Officer Saraff, just like it's not an eye exam, it's not a hearing exam either. I'm going to do the best I can to raise the volume. And Officer Saraff, I want to focus your attention, if you wouldn't mind,
Okay then, Miss Kevin.
on 9 seconds
Baby
after you
priority.
say what happened. Just count in your head and listen very, very carefully to the woman's voice that responds to what she says. Go ahead. Awesome.
Can't hear it.
Very, very hard to hear. Have you listened to that before?
No.
Does it appear to you that she said, my boyfriend, I left him and he never came home?
I couldn't understand anything.
Okay.
Yeah, same here, but I'm deaf. What can I say?
Let's replay it one more time. Turn the volume up one more time right at that moment. Listen for a woman's voice just under. Sorry, I was asking Officer Saraff, please listen to, there's a din of noise, obviously, road noise, wind noise, etc. It's your dash cam, the audio from your dash cam.
What
Once you
happened
close the door,
to
listen very
the camera
carefully,
on body?
about 9 seconds after you say what happened, for a woman's voice, and see if you can make out what that voice says.
Sure.
He's not going to because he doesn't want to admit it.
Stop.
Yeah, I heard home.
Here, I left him and he never came home.
I heard the
I
tone.
couldn't understand what they were saying.
You couldn't understand that?
No,
Do you want to hear it one more time?
No.
I don't think it.
No, the judge
No.
is like, no.
Turn the lights on, please.
Ooh, snap. Judge ain't happy. She's pushing him along.
Now,
That's
if my client had said, my boyfriend, I left him and he never came home, Would that be something that you would find important to put in your report?
Objection.
Sustained.
Wow.
Let's move to another area of the dash cam video. I want to keep playing it at the 28-minute mark, 28-minute and 20-second mark or so.
So can I see Council sidebar for just a minute, please?
Ooh, something is happening she doesn't like. Oh my gosh. Oh, oh, she's not liking it. Okay, guys, he's already been impeached as a witness because there is a lot of inconsistency. But what gets me is not so much the inconsistency, because there always is a little bit. What gets me is how much information was left out. What he verbally testified to and what is written in his report are not the same. And in fact, that when he sat there at the grand jury, what he said there is different, especially that's the mother and father of Mr. O'Keefe. Bless your poor souls. They lost a daughter, a son-in-law, and a son. And now they only have one child left. Oh my gosh. But anyway, not anyway, but let's moving forward is that this particular officer has and the reports of a lot of other people have the address wrong. The times are wrong for the reports of the, okay, now their sound's not up. Okay,
Do
there.
you recognize your dash cam video being on the,
And also
left of the screen?
the 911 call logs are wrong.
Yes, sir.
You're just joining.
Okay, have you looked at Sergeant Good's dash cam video, which is squared
Sergeant
up on the
Good's
right side of the screen?
video. Let's see.
No,
You've never seen it?
no.
Okay. Does it appear to you that these are two different perspectives of the same scene? In other words,
Yeah.
you see the car or the SUV on the left side of the screen right here, correct?
Yes, sir.
See that same SUV right there, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Okay, but you can also
Does that
see other-
appear to be two different perspectives, two different angles,
Yes,
but basically the same thing?
yes.
Okay. I want to draw your attention to the individuals
I'm going to come off so y'all can
to
see
the
better.
left of the SUV right here.
Oh, don't.
There's a person wearing a hood with fur on it. Is that Carrie Roberts? To your memory?
I don't know.
Okay. There appears to be another person
You should.
with a darker jacket standing just in front of that person with the hood and fur. You see that person?
That's
Yes.
him.
Okay. I'm going to ask you to focus on the person in the darker jacket.
Sure.
I'm
I
enlarging.
believe, and the only reason I'm asking you to focus at this point is because I want to try to play this just once and see if you recognize what's depicted in the video.
Sure.
What I expect you may see is this person move out of sight behind the SUV, and then in the background, there's an SUV parked in the driveway. Pay special attention to that portion of the SUV and see if you see that person in the dark jacket pass from right to left in front of that SUV as if they're going to the house. Let's go ahead and play it.
It's the sister-in-law. Now, if you look at the video to the right, you'll probably see it more clearly.
Go ahead and pause it. Have you seen the person in the dark jacket leave the view?
Yes,
Yes.
Did she appear to go behind the SUV?
yes.
Okay, go ahead and play it.
You can see my mouse through it
Stop
right there.
And now I'm going to ask to draw your attention to that car with snow on it. Pay special attention to that car.
I
as
like this
the
view
film
better.
continues to run. Go ahead.
There she goes. I see it. Yep.
Do you see a person standing in front of the car,
It appears to be a person. Yes,
walking from right to left?
yes.
Would that be toward the house?
Yes.
Yes, it would be.
Okay. And also, if you wouldn't mind switching your perspective, now you're looking more at the front of the house. Continue watching the film and see if you see that same person walking toward the house. Stop. Did you see that?
No, I didn't see. Oh, yeah, yes, I saw the shadow, yes.
Right. Shadow of a person
Yes.
walking toward the front of the house.
So
That was
she goes
Jennifer
in and
McKay going into the
notifies.
house, wasn't it?
How did they
I
not
have no
know with
idea.
all those people there
there a
that there's
person going
not
into the
something
house?
going
There's a
on?
person, yes.
Did you give anybody any permission to go into the house?
No,
Would you think that a witness in a homicide scene, we can go ahead and raise the lights, thank you. Would you think that a witness at a homicide scene being allowed to go into a house to make contact with other witnesses?
I didn't know it was a homicide scene, sir.
If I could finish my question. Do you think it's appropriate? Sarah, when you go to a crime scene,
Yes, sir.
one of the first things that you'd want to do is secure the scene and separate witnesses so that interviews could be conducted, correct?
Sure,
You wouldn't want witnesses just cavorting together and getting their story straight, right?
correct.
You'd want to avoid that at all costs, right?
Yes, yes.
And why is that?
So they can't collaborate their story.
Yet there was a person walking from the area where a body was found in the lawn of a house, walking into the house to make contact with other individuals, correct?
It appeared that way, yes, sir.
Does that seem appropriate to you?
No,
Of course not. We've talked a bit about what you did and didn't hear at the scene from my client. At any point when you were at that location, did you hear my client repeating the phrase, "I hit him, I hit him, I hit him, I hit him"?
she said, I hit him? No, I didn't hear that.
You never heard her whisper it, yell it, say it, or otherwise.
Not that I recall.
If you had heard that statement, you likely would have written it down, wouldn't you?
Yes,
You likely would have reported that to Trooper Proctor the next day, wouldn't you?
yes,
You likely would have mentioned it in your grand jury testimony, correct?
yes.
And you did none of those things because you did not hear that statement, correct?
I did not hear that, no.
Wow.
Sir, you were at 34 Fairview for more than an hour before you cleared the scene, right?
Yes, sir.
You were at the location of the body of John O'Keefe.
Yes.
In other words, you just didn't stay in your cruiser. You walked out to where John O'Keefe was.
No, I was in my cruiser at different times. I
Must have been a bad question.
Okay.
You didn't just stay in your cruiser. At points, you got out of your cruiser, walked over, made contact with the women, and you were standing next to the body.
yes,
And you were obviously looking around. You noticed some footprints,
yes,
and you even noticed some lack of footprints.
that's correct.
So you were being observant at the area of the body
Yes,
and the area adjacent to the body.
yes,
You were looking for anything that might have been out of place,
yes,
anything of any evidentiary value, correct?
yes,
You never saw or otherwise observed, located a single piece of taillight material, did you?
no,
You certainly didn't see 45 pieces of broken plastic or taillight material, did you?
no,
You never located or otherwise observed John O'Keefe's missing shoe
no,
or any other clothing of his.
I didn't, no,
Officer Saraff, did you ever think to look inside the house for
no,
that missing shoe?
no,
That never crossed your mind?
no,
You think that might have been a smart thing to do at the time?
Objection, Your Honor.
Rephrase the question.
Sure. Do you think that would have been appropriate protocol when dealing with a body laying on a lawn that is partially unclothed to look inside the house of the lawn?
no,
You didn't think that would have been an appropriate protocol
no,
for you or anybody else?
no,
Obviously, you did not conduct a search of that house, did you?
nope,
And you're aware that to this day, no law enforcement officer ever conducted a search of that house?
I'm not aware of that.
Yeah, just a moment, Your Honor.
Yes.
It really depends on the situation or whether or not they would have conducted a search of the
No further
house
questions,
if
Your
they
Honor. Thank
felt
you.
that he was
Anything,
in the
Mr.
house.
Lally?
Briefly, Your Honor.
Okay.
They should have, if there was any chance he'd been in the house. Redirect.
Morning, sir.
Morning.
You were asking questions, you were shown a dispatch log, is that correct?
That's correct.
And dispatch log, as far as the Canton Police Department is concerned, are you aware of sort of how or when or who creates that?
Yes.
And can you explain to the jury sort of how that document sort of comes into being?
So when a call comes in, an officer is at the desk, and usually the first thing they would do is dispatch, get people going to the scene and get everybody rolling as far as if they need FD, police, whatever resources they need, and basically then type in what the call is and who's going.
So fair to say it's more important to get assets allocated to a scene, especially in the case of an emergency, which is why someone's calling 911, than to ensure that the dispatch time is correct down to the second.
Absolutely.
Now, you were asking questions about different things that you heard the defendant say, correct?
That's correct.
And you were shown specifically some grand jury testimony from April of 2022, in which you indicated during that testimony that the defendant stated, "This is my fault."
Yes.
And is that based on your memory of what she said?
Yes.
And you also testified yesterday along those same lines, correct?
Correct.
What you testified to before this jury, as far as your memory, is that accurate as to what happened on that scene, January 29th, 2022?
Yes.
Now, prior to this call, did you know Kerry Roberts?
No.
Did you know Karen Reed?
No.
Did you know John O'Keefe?
No.
Did you know Jennifer McKay?
No.
Based on what you've seen as far as the dash camera, would you be able to differentiate between Jennifer McKay or Kerry Roberts from that dash camera footage?
No.
While you were on scene, did you see
How big is this police
anybody
department?
from 34 Fairview Road, from that address, come outside?
No.
Did you see anybody from any address on that entire street for the entire 90 minutes that you were there come outside?
No.
Now, you were asking questions about some different addresses on Fairview, whether they be 32 or 35. Do you know where either 32 or 35 is located in relation to 34?
It would be next to each other in sequential order.
Nothing further.
Okay.
Nothing, Your Honor. Thank you.
All right, you're all set, officer. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Mr. Lally, who is your next witness?
Your Honor, I'm with the call officer, Stephen Mullaney, to the stand.
Okay.
Stephen Mullaney.
There's a lot of people with similar names now. Exactly. If you've got that many cops and you've got that much sirens and noise going on, somebody's going to walk outside. But with the weather as bad as it was, and they had just watched out their window, who knows? I would have gone outside. Don't care. But I'm a first responder, so it's a little different.
Raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear the evidence you give in the court and jury in the case now and hearing should be truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
Noise are still.
You can stand or sit, sir, whatever is more comfortable. Just make sure you speak into the microphone, please.
Stand or sit?
Hey, whenever you're ready, Mr. Lally.
Did she say stand or sit?
Morning, sir.
Morning.
Could you please state your name and spell your last name?
Stephen Mullaney, Mullaney.
And how are you employed, sir?
I am employed by the Canton Police Department as a patrolman
How long have you been a patrolman for the Canton Police?
since July 2020 and a full-time officer since August 2021.
And if I could call your attention to the evening of January 28th, 2022 into the morning of January 29th, 2022. Were you working on that occasion?
Yes, I was working the 11:45 p.m. to 7:45 a.m. patrol shift.
And were you dispatched to a call shortly after 6 a.m. on the 29th?
Yes, I was.
And where were you dispatched to and what was that in regards?
34 Fairview Road for a unresponsive party.
Okay, at least he got
We
it
can turn
right.
back just for a second as far as when you're assigned as far as a patrolman with the Canton Police, are there different sort of geographic sectors within the town to which you're assigned?
That
Yep, I
is
was assigned to the east sector.
And it's Fairview Road within that east sector?
It's the west sector.
Let me pause that for a good quick second. That's a great comment, and I want to touch on that. They're going to get into a lot of monotonous details about, his experience. So I want to say this. As a first responder, we're required by law. Now, if there's already other responders on, we're not required to react as far as go and do CPR and all that. But good mornings, Eddie. Good morning, Sparkles. Thank you for joining. But I, as a first responder, and I'm surprised he did not come out of the house. Why did he not come out of the house? That's on his property. He's liable. I would come out of the house. Okay, let me catch you two up real quick. Officer Stephen Saraff, I don't know how to say his name, just left the stand, testified that there were some inconsistencies on the 911 log, dispatch log on times and orders in which the first responders and police officers showed up. Dash cam shows a totally different story as to the order and timing of them showing up. And guess what? He never heard, that officer never heard Karen Reed say, I did it. I hit him. He never heard that. One of the comments was that he was really focused on in his report was, is he dead? Is he dead? Now, mind you, Karen Reed was doing CPR. The other woman, I forgot her name, was with her. But the Jennifer lady didn't assist in any way. In fact, when the patrol officer, Stephen Saraff, showed up, she pulled him aside. Yeah. So there's been some interesting, weird stuff going on. So y'all may have to go back and watch that during break. But right now we have a brand new witness on the stand, Officer Stephen Mullaney, and he was there second, I believe. I'd have to look. Let me look at my notes. I've already got a page and a half of notes. Officer Mullaney showed up second. So Saraff showed up at 6:10, Mullaney at 6:11, and Good showed up at 6:16. The call logs showed that Officer Saraff showed up at 6:09:29, Mullaney 6:09:26, and Good at 6:09:33. 7 seconds difference instead of a 1 minute and 6 minutes difference. And also the other thing is that there's an inconsistency with the address given in testimony. Okay, here we go. Let's see what this one says. By the way, y'all, I will be hopping in and out. Oh, don't tell me I did it again. I will be hopping in and out. I am having to take care of my son's shop. My son is, oh, come on, don't give me this. Not here. Oh gosh, come on. Seriously, y'all. Let me see where I can go back. Let me hop it.
Call comes in, an officer is at the desk and,
I'm hopping it.
I don't recall.
Okay, because the way we won't get
Nope.
the.
No, Kerry Rock, geographic
There we
sectors
go.
within the town to which you're assigned?
Yep, I was assigned to the east sector.
And it's Fairview Road.
Sorry,
within that
sometimes we
east
have
sector?
to do that.
It's the west sector.
So you were assigned to the east sector, but dispatched to a call in the west sector.
See, that's on them. Come on. Let me see if I can get it to
Now, if I
force
could turn
it.
back just for a second, as
Okay.
far as when you're assigned as far as a patrolman with Canton Police, are there different sort of geographic sectors within the town to which you're assigned?
Yep, I was assigned to the east sector.
And it's Fairview Road within that east sector?
It's the west sector.
So you were assigned to the east sector, but dispatched to a call in the west sector.
Oh, dude, seriously? Let me see what I can do, y'all.
And you're en route time sort of between the station and arriving on the scene?
I do not know.
Now, as far as when you're driving from the station to the scene, what, if anything, do you recall about sort of the road conditions, visibility, anything like that?
Visibility was difficult. I don't exactly recall how far you could see, but it was definitely coming down.
And at this point in time, on January 29th, just after 6 a.m., what is sort of the lighting conditions? Has the sun come up yet? Is it dark out, or what's going on?
It was still dark out.
And if you recall, what was sort of the vehicular traffic on the roadway between the station and your arrival on Fairview Road?
I don't recall there being any traffic.
Now, as far as when you are coming to the scene, do you recall whether or not you had to activate sort of your lights or your sirens or anything like that?
I believe I would have used the blue lights.
Do you recall using sirens?
I do not recall whether or not I used sirens.
Why?
And if you know, about how much time elapsed between the time that you received the call and the time that you arrived on Fairview?
3 minutes approximately.
And when you arrive there, what, if anything, is sort of the first thing that you see?
I saw Officer Saraff towards like the front lawn, kind of surrounding the victim. There's a couple other people as well. And the fire department was on arrival right about the same time.
And so, beyond yourself and Officer Saraff from Canton Police, were there other sort of town assets that were dispatched to this call as well?
The fire department.
And when you say the fire department, how many sort of vehicles or what was their response as far as?
I believe they had a fire engine and ambulance.
And do you recall if the fire engine and the ambulance came from sort of the same side as you from Cedar Crest, or did they come into the scene from from the opposite side as far as from?
I think they had come down Chapman Street to Fairview, and they were facing towards Cedar Crest.
Now,
What did you think about those opening statements? I have some opinions we're going to talk about when we have a break.
And you indicated that you saw a person on the ground. Is that correct?
Yes.
And just for clarity purposes, at some point subsequent to this, you were able to identify the person that was on the ground. Is that correct?
Yes.
That was John O'Keefe. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And where the other people that you indicated were there, where were they in relation to John O'Keefe?
I think I don't really recall where everybody was upon my arrival, but I think everyone was kind of like in the vicinity around the curb to the street.
Now, as far as when you're first arriving, you're pulling up to the scene, were you able to see Mr. O'Keefe on the ground at that point, or
I saw people around him, but I had to get closer before I saw the victim on the ground.
And so the other people that you saw around him, were they kneeling down, standing up, or something else?
I believe Officer Saraff was still standing up. I don't recall anyone else.
Saraff. Okay, that's how.
And so fair to say you saw our Officer Saraff standing up near Mr. O'Keefe before you actually saw Mr. O'Keefe, correct?
Yes.
Now, this
I
particular
agree.
area where you saw Officer Saraff standing up and Mr. O'Keefe, Officer O'Keefe on the ground.
Okay, Miss Cal.
What, if any, sort of additional ambient lighting did you observe in that area? Was there any street lights or anything like that around there?
Not that I recall.
They always do.
Now, in addition to Officer Saraff, at some point did you encounter some other individuals or civilian people on scene?
Yep, Miss Jen McCabe.
And in addition to Ms. McCabe, were there any other female parties there as well?
Yeah, Carrie Roberts.
And in addition to Ms. Roberts, was there any other female parties there?
Yes, Miss Reed.
And just to be clear, do you see Ms. Reed in the courtroom today?
Yes.
Okay. Could you identify where?
Y'all, I'm heartbroken. I had 2 subscribers cancel. I lost my 200. I'm heartbroken.
As to where she's seated or an article of clothing she's wearing?
Black dress.
That's a record reflect identification.
Yes.
Now, prior to this call, did you have any prior sort of familiarity with Karen Reed?
No.
Okay. With John O'Keefe?
No.
With Jennifer McCabe?
No.
With Carrie Roberts?
No.
And when you arrive and you make those sort of initial observations, where is it that you go? What, if anything, do you do?
The fire department began their life-saving measures, and at one point we were able to get him onto the stretcher or onto a backboard, I believe it's called, and then onto a stretcher.
And what, if any, involvement did you have with that?
I assisted the fire department in placing him on the backboard and then helping get him onto the stretcher.
Now, as far as you mentioned that the where you came and located Mr. O'Keefe, you recall sort of what position his body was in when you first observed him?
He was lying face up, as was back on the ground.
And you recall where he was in relation to the roadway, if you could tell?
Yeah, he was on the front lawn. So, I didn't know exactly where the curb was, but I would think about, approximately 10 feet from the curb.
And so you mentioned that you couldn't tell exactly where the curb was. Why is that?
There was snow on the ground.
So the snow sort of covered the curb at that time that you're there, is that correct?
Yes.
But you approximate it was about 10 feet into the lawn.
Yeah.
And the snow on the ground that you observed at the time when you first arrived, about how much snow had accumulated on the ground?
I'd say at that point, approximately 6 inches.
And what, if any, snow did you observe on any part of Mr. O'Keefe's body when you first saw him?
There was really no snow, but you could tell that he had been in the conditions. It was almost as if it was like water, kind of like frozen on kind of to his face.
And did you make any observations, or what, if any, observations did you make beyond his face as far as sort of the rest of his body?
I don't recall really any other observations.
Do you recall how he was dressed?
I do not.
Do you recall what, if any, snow was on any other part of his body?
I do not.
That's a lot of I don't recall.
As,
That should have been documented.
Was concerned, what, if any, observations did you make as far as any injuries to Mr. O'Keefe at that initial time?
I did not recall any injuries.
So nothing stood out to you, is that correct?
No, correct.
And you assist the fire department getting him onto a backboard, correct?
Yes.
And where did Mr. O'Keefe go from there?
To the ambulance.
Did you go to the ambulance as well?
Not that I recall, no.
So fire department sort of takes over care of Mr. O'Keefe at that point.
Yes.
So after Mr. O'Keefe is lifted up, when he's lifted up, what, if anything, did you observe as far as the grounds that had been underneath Mr. O'Keefe and where he was?
I didn't recall anything. Observe anything? No. No.
You recall even looking sort of in that area?
No, I think he was in front of me, so I wouldn't have seen what was under him.
Dude, yeah, you would. I can sit here and recall
So after
5
Mr.
years
O'Keefe
ago.
is taken by members of the fire department over to the ambulance, what is it that you did?
Officer Saraff, at that point, we were trying to identify the victim, so I spoke to Ms. McCabe.
And without sort of anything that Ms. McCabe told you, about how long period of time did you talk to Ms. McCabe gathering information?
Approximately 2 minutes,
And who, if anyone else, did you speak with attempting to gather information regarding Ms. Rose?
Ms. McCabe's the only one I recall speaking to.
Now, as far as the defendant, Ms. Reed, what, if anything, do you recall her sort of doing as you're on scene and as you're going about what you're trying to do?
She was screaming, is that my boyfriend? Is he dead?
Whoa,
When you
wait,
say
wait, wait, wait,
screaming
wait, wait,
in a
wait, wait,
fairly loud
wait,
voice.
wait, whoa. Screaming. Is that my boyfriend? Is he dead? Whoa, back up. I have to stop here because I call BS on that. She's freaking doing CPR. She's identified him as her boyfriend. This is not a question. Is that my boyfriend? She may say, that's my boyfriend. Is he dead? Big difference. What the same blast? Okay, y'all, I gotta do this. Screaming goat. I call BS on that. This guy just screwed the pooch on that one. Sorry, y'all, for the language.
Correct.
Very, very loud, yes.
And as far as that sort of phraseology, as far as is he dead, how many times was that something she said? Once, more than once, or something?
Repeated many times.
During that.
And with the same sort of volume that she had said it with, as you described the first time?
Yes.
I'm sorry, I had to soak that in a minute. I as a juror would have gone. They wouldn't want me as a jury because I can't control the face. When I see BS, I can't control.
And as far as, if you know, about how long was the ambulance on scene before it left to go to the hospital?
10 minutes approximately.
Do you know what hospital it went to?
Good Samaritan.
And
At least you remembered that. The other guy didn't.
after the ambulance left and went to the hospital, where did the three women that you're talking about being defendant, Ms. McCabe, Ms. Roberts, where did they go?
I believe they left the scene.
So did you have any, or what if any conversations did you have with any of them following that?
None.
Now, as far as Ms. Reed, the defendant, is concerned, what if anything else did you observe as far as her saying or her demeanor or anything like that?
Just the screams and she was very distraught.
Yeah, I
At
would
some
imagine
point,
her boyfriend sitting
did
there
Ms. Reed
dead.
sort of stay in one place, or where did Ms. Reed go sort of around the cruisers and the ambulance and all of that?
I believe she went into one of the vehicles. I don't know if it was a cruiser or one of the cars. Stay warm.
And the other two women that were with her, as far as Ms. McCabe, Ms. Roberts, were they in the same general vicinity as the defendant, or were they separated, if you recall?
I don't recall.
Now, at some point after they had left the scene, what, if anything, were you advised by your dispatch in regard to Ms. Reed?
We were dispatched that, or Canton Control had advised us that she's making suicidal statements.
And so based on that, what, if anything, did you or the other
Whoa,
officers?
I got to
that were
hear
on
that
scene
again.
do at that point?
I don't
About being defendant, Ms. McCabe, Ms. Roberts, where did they go?
believe they left the scene.
So did you have any, or what, if any, conversations did you have with any of them following that?
None.
Now, as far as Ms. Reed, the defendant, is concerned, what, if anything else, did you observe as far as her saying or her demeanor or anything like that?
Just the screams and she was very distraught.
Now, at some point, did Ms. Reed sort of stay in one place, or where did Ms. Reed go sort of around the cruisers and the ambulance and all of that?
I
I had to
believe
hear it again.
she went into one of the vehicles. I don't know if it was a cruiser or one of the cars. Stay warm.
And the other two women that were with her, as far as Ms. McCabe, Ms. Roberts, were they in the same general vicinity as the defendant, or were they separated, if you recall?
I don't recall.
it's convenient. I don't recall on some of this.
Now, at some point after they had left the scene, what, if anything, were you advised by your dispatch in regard to Ms. Reed?
We were dispatched that, or Canton Control had advised us that she's making suicidal statements.
And so based on that, what, if anything, did you or the other officers that you were on scene with do at that point?
I don't recall exactly who, but someone had called Ms. Roberts to have Ms. Reed come back to the scene, and we section 12 there.
And so about how much time elapsed between the time that you learned that from dispatch and the time that Ms. Reed arrives back on scene with Ms. Roberts?
5 minutes, approximately.
Now, you mentioned that there may have been other officers on scene, correct?
Yes.
So in addition.
Okay, I'm confused. I'm writing that. I'm confused. So Karen Reed leaves the scene. Then dispatch contacts them and states that Karen Reed is making suicidal statements. So they ask her to come back to the scene so they can section 12 her. Hence, they transport her to the hospital. That doesn't make sense to me. Eddie, I am so glad y'all are safe. I know a lot of people in your town. I mean, the tornadoes were horrible. I saw some of the photos. I am confused. We need clarification on this. This gets a triple star. When I say triple star, I'm starring it because I want to come back later. Who did she make the comments to, and how did they find out about it if she's driving? Yes, prayers for the community. If I was still in the Red Cross, I'd be there right now. Not in Red Cross anymore. But, oh my gosh, y'all, I don't get it. That to me is a huge, what the is this? You think she's in a cop car. But see, Karen Reed left the scene and came back. And not in a cop car. She left the scene and returned by Officer Saraff testimony yesterday that she had left the scene and came back a few minutes earlier and he didn't know why. Now, this gentleman says that she left the scene and she was instructed to come back. Let's listen some more.
In addition to yourself and Officer Saraff, who, if anyone else from your department, arrived on scene while you were there?
Sergeant Good arrived, Sergeant Lank at the time, and Lieutenant Gallagher.
And when was that in relation to when yourself and Officer Saraff arrived on scene?
Sergeant Good was there shortly after, and then Sergeant Lank shortly after him, and then Lieutenant Gallagher after that.
And in total, as far as sort of the earliest and the longest, about how long was it until Lieutenant Gallagher arrived on scene?
I'd say less than 45 minutes.
And in total, how long was it that you were on scene that morning?
90 minutes to 2 hours.
And during the course of time that you were on scene, at some point, did the sun come up?
Yes.
And during the time that you were on scene, as far as the conditions, and let me ask just a little bit more about that. So you indicated something about snow being on the ground and not being able to see the curb, correct?
Yes.
What, if any, sort of other things in addition to that, from a weather perspective, what was the temperature out at that time?
It was very cold. It's cold.
Could you or do you have any estimate as far as to how cold? 25, and it was windy. And when you say windy, could you expound upon that as far as like what kind of wind? Are we talking constant wind, gusts, or something?
I would say gust to constant.
And fairly strong winds, light winds, what kind of?
Not necessarily strong, light winds, but it was definitely windy.
And during that sort of total time, about 90 minutes or so that you were on scene, was the weather consistent throughout that entire period that you were on scene?
That I recall, yes.
Now, in the area where you first observed Mr. O'Keefe's body on the lawn. After his body was removed by the fire department, what, if anything, did you observe sort of in that general area?
Nothing.
Now, again, you said that Ms. Reed was brought back to the scene or around Fairview Road at the same time by Ms. Roberts, correct?
Correct.
You know where she went from there?
She was transported to Good Samaritan.
Different ambulance than had taken Mr. O'Keefe.
Correct. Different ambulance. Yep.
Now, as far as Mr. O'Keefe was concerned, you assisted getting him onto the backboard, is that correct?
Yes.
Did you also assist getting him onto the stretcher?
Yes.
And beyond sort of the visual observations that you made, did you have occasion to, in that process, have any sort of tactile observations? Did you come into contact with Mr. O'Keefe's body at any point?
No.
Beyond what you've already testified to, did you make any other observations at any point of Mr. O'Keefe, his body, or any injuries?
No, not that I recall.
Sir, I'm gonna direct your attention up to the screen over here. Ms. Gilman, if you could just put up Exhibit 25 and just sort of pause it as soon as it comes up.
You want to go lay down. Good girls. Good girl. Lay down.
So, Officer Mullaney, I'm directing your attention to the screen and what's been marked as Exhibit 25. Generally speaking, what's depicted up on the screen here, is that consistent with what you recall as far as the conditions when you were responding to Fairview Road that morning?
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If I could ask for Exhibit number 3. Yes.
Had to get me another cup of
Exhibit
coffee
number 9.
and other things.
And Officer Mullaney, directing your attention to what's up on the screen, has been previously marked as Exhibit number 9. Do you recognize what's depicted in that photograph?
Yes.
What do you recognize?
That's 34 Fairview.
Is that how it's depicted in that photograph? Is that a relatively fair and accurate portrayal of what you observed of the residents on the morning of January 29, 2022?
Yes.
And Ms. Gilman, if I could have Exhibit number 18. And again, Officer Mullaney, what's up on the screen? Do you recognize what's depicted in Exhibit 18?
Yes.
And what do you recognize that?
That's 34 Fairview.
Up.
That's sort of a different view, is that correct?
Yes.
Lay down.
Now, with regard to the residents, if I'm standing on the street and I'm facing the residents as in the previous photograph, the area of the lawn where you first observed Mr. O'Keefe laying on his back with his face up, would that be to the left of the residence, the right of the residence, or dead center, or something else?
Left.
And what, if anything, did you observe sort of in that general area as far as any sort of landmarks or things that were in that area?
A fire hydrant and a flagpole.
And may I approach the witness room?
Yes.
I don't know why that's coming up, y'all. I'm trying to fix it.
This is a laser point.
Oh, that's in there. That's embedded. Okay.
So, officer, if I could ask you, using that laser pointer, directing, if you could direct the jury's attention to where in that photograph, if anywhere, you recall Mr. O'Keefe's body being located when you first.
Right in this area.
Thanks.
Right here.
If I may have one moment, Your Honor.
Yes.
Right there where all those
And also you can-
ones were.
Thanks. I have no further questions for this witness, Your Honor.
Right, cross
Amen,
examination.
Thank you, Ron.
I am so glad all of y'all are okay. Lord knows I was definitely in prayer. What y'all don't realize is I'm a storm chaser in Texas. And,
morning, Officer.
Good morning.
Officer
I
Mullaney, you
do
and
know
I
how
have
dangerous
never
those
met
are.
before, correct?
Correct.
So
We've
glad
never
you're
spoken
safe,
about this case.
No.
but I am praying for the town.
Is it fair to say that when you were dispatched to 34 Fairview Road on January 29th of 2022, you were a part-time officer at that point?
No, it's full time.
When did you start at the Canton Police Department?
July 2020.
Did you start as a part-time officer?
I did.
Oh, I see. I misunderstood your testimony. You actually became full-time in August of 2021.
Correct, sir. Yes.
All right. So you had been full-time at that point for about 6 months when you received this call, correct?
Yes, sir.
And it's fair to say that you were the junior officer on scene?
Yes, it is.
We have your backs. If you need anything, let me know. I do know a lot of resources that if you need anything.
You had testified
Give me
that
a call.
you approached Fairview from the Cedar Crest side, correct?
Yes.
34 Fairview Road is much closer to the Cedar Crest side than it is to the Chapman side.
We
Correct.
love everybody here.
And when you take a left on Cedar Crest to enter Fairview Road, 34 Fairview is the second house on the right. Does that make sense?
From Cedar Crest? Yes.
Yes.
And you were quickly surmising that whatever action was taking place there was taking place on the front lawn of 34 Fairview, correct?
Yes, sir.
And one of the first things that you saw was there appeared to be a woman giving CPR to somebody on the ground.
Yeah, yes.
You didn't know who that woman was at the time, correct?
No, sir.
But you later learned her identity.
Yes, I don't recall which female it was that was given CPR though.
Okay. So you don't recall that it was Karen Reed who was giving CPR to John O'Keefe?
I don't know who it was.
At some point in time, you came in contact with Karen Reed, correct, while you were on scene?
Not direct contact, but I was on scene when she was there.
I mean, you were there until about 8 a.m., correct?
Yes.
And you were dispatched shortly after 6 a.m., correct?
Yes, sir.
You were there for approximately 2 hours, correct?
Yes.
You were there when Karen Reed was there when you showed up, correct?
Yes.
She left and she came back to the scene, correct?
Yes.
And you were there when she came back, correct?
Yes, sir.
So with regard to your contact with her, she certainly was within eyeshot, correct?
Yes, sir.
And you actually at some points were closer to her than you are to me right now, correct?
Yeah.
How close did you get to her?
10 feet.
All right. With the court's permission, I'd like to walk toward you and have you stop me when I'm at the point when you were at your closest to Karen Reed. Can I do that, Your Honor?
Okay, go ahead.
Thank you.
Right there.
Okay. And when you were this close to her, and you're estimating this to be about 10 feet, correct?
Sure.
When you were this close to her, was there anything blocking your view of her face?
Not that I recall.
All right. You noticed, obviously, that she had blood on her face, correct?
I did not notice that. No.
You didn't notice that she had blood in her hair.
I did not notice that.
You did notice that she was absolutely hysterical.
Yes.
She was completely distraught.
Yes.
She appeared to be in shock.
Yes.
And there was a contrast between that demeanor that you observed with regard to Karen Reed and the demeanor of one of the other women on scene, Jennifer McCabe, was there not?
Can you kind of explain further?
Sure. Karen Reed was screaming, correct?
Yes.
She was yelling, correct?
Yes.
She was hysterical and distraught, correct?
Yes.
Jennifer McCabe was not.
Correct.
And you actually had more contact, direct contact with Jennifer McCabe that morning, correct?
Yes.
And you spoke to Jennifer McCabe for a good 2 minutes, correct?
Yes, sir.
Face to face.
Yes, sir.
You were closer to Jennifer McCabe than you ever got to Karen Reed, correct?
Yes.
You were able to observe her demeanor.
Yes.
You were able to hear her tone of voice.
Yes.
You were able to hear how loudly she was speaking, correct?
Yes.
You were able to hear how quickly she was speaking.
Yes.
During those 2 minutes that you were face to face closer to Jennifer McCabe, she was not screaming, correct?
Correct.
She was not yelling.
Correct.
She was not hysterical.
Correct.
She was not distraught.
Yes.
She was calm.
Correct.
Objection, Your Honor.
I'll allow it, but let's move on.
Jennifer McCabe didn't have any blood on her face, correct?
No.
And you didn't see any blood in Jennifer McCabe's hair, correct?
No.
Now, with regard to what you heard Karen Reed scream that morning, I just want to make sure I get your testimony correct. I believe on direct examination, you stated that she kept repeating two phrases, one being, "Is he dead?" and the second being, "That's my boyfriend," correct?
Yes.
And how many times do you think that she repeated those two phrases?
It's quite a bit, more than 10.
Okay, like almost too many times to count, really.
Yeah. Yes, sir.
And each time she
I'll be
said,
back, mods.
"Is he dead?" what was her tone of voice?
Screaming very loudly.
Each time she said, "Is that my boyfriend?" what was her tone of voice?
Same.
And you got there not long after Officer Saraff, correct?
Correct.
In any of during the time, let me strike that, during the time that you were on scene and you heard Karen Reed screaming and yelling in this distraught and hysterical manner, you never once heard her say, "I did it," correct?
I did not.
You never once heard her say, "It's my fault," correct?
I did not.
You never once heard her say, "I hit him, I hit him, I hit him," correct?
I did not.
If you had heard any of those statements, you would have recognized that those would have been important to note, correct?
Yes, sir.
And
Wow.
you would have noted those in your police report, obviously, correct?
Yes.
So who
Because
heard
you
it?
know that
Sorry, y'all.
when you're drafting a police report, you want to include all the important details, correct?
Yes, sir.
And you want to be precise and accurate, correct?
Yes.
And so you didn't put those statements in your report because you never heard those statements come out of Karen Reed's mouth.
Yes, sir.
Now, while you were on scene, at some point in time, you were asked to participate in a search for evidence on that front lawn, were you not?
I was standing by. I didn't directly search for anything that I recall.
All right, and when you say you were standing by the area where John O'Keefe's body had been,
Yes.
correct? And how close were you to that area?
I was right off the curb at that point on the street.
How many feet from where the body had been?
10 to 12 feet. 15
Okay, so maybe about the same distance as when I walked toward you, around that distance?
Yeah. Yes, sir.
And how much time did you spend around that distance from where John O'Keefe's body had been?
I don't recall.
You were there for 2 hours, correct?
Yes.
So is it fair to say that you were sort of in and around that area multiple times during that 2 hours?
Yes.
Did you ever see anybody put up any crime scene tape at all?
Snap.
I don't recall that.
There it is,
You
Sparkles.
recall other officers sort of searching that area, correct?
Yes.
And while you were near that area, you were certainly paying attention to it, correct?
Yes.
Did you see officers?
If you're paying attention, how can you not
use
recall?
any equipment to clear some of the snow in that area?
Yes, sir.
What did you see?
There was a leaf blower.
Where did that leaf blower come from?
I don't know.
Who had the leaf blower?
I believe it was Lieutenant Gallagher.
When did Lieutenant Gallagher arrive on scene?
45 minutes after I did, approximately. I don't recall the exact time.
And how big was that leaf blower?
Not too big. It was
Was it handheld or was it something that you pushed?
handheld.
And who used the leaf blower?
Lieutenant Gallagher.
At what area or on what area did he use that leaf blower?
The front lawn.
And would that have been around the area where John O'Keefe's body had been?
Yes.
And you were watching him as he did that, correct?
Yes.
What other officers were in that area sort of watching what was going on or participating in the search for what was going on?
I don't necessarily recall where everybody was, but I believe it would be Sergeant Lank and Sergeant Good.
And they were superior officers, correct?
Correct.
And you understood that
The body had been removed.
brother officers of yours were looking for evidence, right?
Yes.
They were looking for clues about potentially what had happened to John O'Keefe, correct?
Yes.
And you were paying attention too as they were doing their work, correct?
Yes.
You were looking for anything that might have been out of place, correct?
Yes.
If there was something large there that didn't appear to, be appropriate for a front lawn, you would have made note of that, correct?
Yes.
And if there was something small there, you would have still made note of that if it didn't appear to belong on a front lawn, correct?
Yes.
At any point in time, either before or after the leaf blower was taken out by Lieutenant Gallagher, did you see 45 pieces of bright red, black, and clear plastic pieces scattered all over the scene?
I did not.
Did you find or see even one piece of broken plastic?
I did not.
Now,
That doesn't bode well.
when you came to the scene, John O'Keefe was still lying on the ground, correct?
Yes.
Did you see whether or not there were any blankets on scene?
No.
Did you know that one of the women on scene had a sister who lived in that very house?
I did not.
When you were
That's interesting. They objected
speaking
with
with
the other
Jennifer
witness,
McCabe at any
and it
point,
was abstained. They didn't hear.
did you learn whether she had actually gone into that house at all?
Objection.
Sustained.
Did you see Jennifer McCabe approach that house at any point when you were on scene?
No.
Were you alerted at any point by anyone that she went into that house while you were on scene?
No.
Did you ever see Jennifer McCabe come out of that house with blankets or anything else that might comfort John O'Keefe?
No.
What was your state of mind regarding whether there were any first responders in that house?
Wasn't aware of that.
Nobody told you.
No.
How big is this police department? Because they know each other.
You had testified that
That's strange to me.
at one point,
Okay,
you
I'm going to
saw
pause
Karen
real quick. I
Reed,
got to say this.
uh,
I'm going to research this as how big this department was. I don't think it was super huge. But y'all, as a first responder, now I'm not paid, I'm volunteer. It's a lot different. But you're on scene with a lot of people, not this particular scene, but you guys see each other coming and going from car accidents to DOAs to all kind of crimes that involved EMS. You know your first responders. You may not know everybody's name, but you know their faces. So it is perplexing to me when, number one, you have a first responder in the house that didn't even come out to investigate what was going on. Y'all, that's a lot of sirens. That's a lot of noise. And I have a radio right here. Now I turn it off during the thing, but this radio, every first responder has. Y'all can't tell me that he didn't know there was a, what's the word I'm looking for? Joe happening outside his house. Y'all can't tell me that. It's like you are subconsciously tuned in, and if you hear that many sirens outside your house, you're gonna freaking get up and look. And then if it's on your property, you're going to get your butt out there. I don't care if it's 25 degrees, -10 degrees. You're going to get your butt up and you're going to go out and investigate what's going on. So, and your sister comes in and out of the house and you do not know, come out at any point on your own. That I call BS, because that's, I know I'm kind of going on a rant, y'all, but I call it. I'm calling it as I see it. First responders are, I mean, it's horrible, but I could be in my house. Now I'm deaf without my hearing aid, so it's the lights that get me. And the lady across the street's husband during COVID was very ill. He did end up dying, poor thing. But they had an ambulance and a cop car over at his house because she called in a sick call. And I'm sound asleep at 2:30 in the morning. I still remember all this, y'all. And I remember he had on a blue flannel shirt when they pulled him out of the house on the stretcher. But it woke me up. Just the lights alone woke me up. Now, our street's not very wide, so it's a lot more narrow. But I get up, I go to the door, I see there's something going on at my neighbor's house. So what do? I throw on my robe, even though I'm in pajamas, and I go across the street and ask her, "Are you okay? What can I do?" And I'm the neighbor. It was in the middle of February. It was cold. It'd been raining. It wasn't the best of weather. I go over there and she says that she thinks he has COVID. Please back. I don't want you to get sick. And I'm all like, I pulled the mask out in my pocket, in my, where my keys are by the door, and I put it on as I went over there. But this is bull. You can't sit here and tell me nobody in that house knew something wasn't happening in that front lawn. And the sister of the wife goes over there and gets blankets or goes in the house and they don't know it. I call bull. I'm not sorry. I call bull. Let's keep going. And
being escorted into a motor vehicle.
I'm going to say this real quick again. They're selective, not recalling. Y'all, I can recall a lot of information from a lot of scenes I've been on. If I had to sit and recall, now there's some things I wouldn't 10 years ago. But if I'm talking about a victim 2 years ago, I may not remember exactly their names, but I remember what they were wearing. I remember what I did. Y'all, I have a problem with this. And he was prepped for trial. So for him to say, I don't remember specifics, I have a problem.
Yes.
And that was one of the women on scene, her motor vehicle?
Yes, it was either that or a cruiser.
All right.
Both kind of the same area.
But you'll agree with me, at no point in
I can't
time
remember if she was in a
did you
cruiser
see
or
Karen
another
Reed and Jennifer McCabe
personally
in a vehicle
operated
together.
vehicle.
Not that I recall, no.
Operated vehicle.
And at no point in time did you ever hear Karen Reed ask Jennifer McCabe to Google anything?
No.
I may have a moment, Your Honor.
Yes.
I have no further questions. Thank you, officer.
Wow. Done with them. Next. Y'all, I'm already filling this book up. I've got 3 pages today.
So, Officer Mullaney, you've been to other scenes in which there is a deceased person on scene, family members or friends around?
Yes.
And of those other scenes, does everybody who's a friend or a family member of the person who is injured or deceased, do they all react the same?
No.
Is every single one of them screaming and yelling different things?
No.
And there are actually 3 women on scene that morning, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so there was Jennifer McCabe, there was the defendant, Miss Reed, and there was Kerry Roberts, correct?
Correct.
And did you see any blood on Miss Roberts's face or hair?
No.
Okay, was she screaming and yelling things and moving around the scene?
No.
But that's not the boyfriend.
Now, as far as
They're not
the residents in
intimately
34 Fairview Road,
involved.
did you see anybody go in or come out of that residence during the time that you were on scene?
No.
And as far as any of the other residences on the entire rest of the street, did you see any of the neighbors or anybody else come outside at any point in time?
I did not.
I have nothing further.
Just one question, if I might.
Okay.
Recross.
Sure.
And I don't mean to be a wise guy, sir, but did any of the other neighbors on the entire street have the body of a dead police officer on their front lawn?
Objection,
No.
Your Honor.
All right. So that's sustained. All right. You are all set, sir.
Thank you.
All right,
not going there.
folks, it's
Bye-bye.
11 o'clock. We'll take our morning recess, 15 minutes.
15-minute recess. Okay, I'm going to him forward and then I'm going to take a 2-minute recess here and then we'll catch up. Y'all. I am still baffled over the fact that for hours there's people in the front yard of Brian and Nicole Alberts and they didn't come out. That is so not normal. That's a lot of commotion. You have 4 or 5 police cars that show up on scene with lights and sirens. You got an ambulance showing up on scene. Well, when there's an ambulance, there's always a fire engine. There's always a fire truck. If they're not already on scene. So you have a crap load of lights going. It's like the 4th of July outside your window for 2 hours. And you don't know something's going to, okay. All right, love. We appreciate and love you. Thank you, Miss Kevin, so much. Appreciate you. Sparkles, do you got this? As a mod, you got it? As I said, my office is based out of my son's office. And so he's not able to be here today. So I will be jumping in and out to help his clients, but it'd only be 5 minutes. So Maud, when I say I'll be back, that's what's happening. Just monitor, please. So the thing that gets me is that you have a lot of accusations of her saying things like, I hit him, I did this, it's my fault. And we have yet to have one person say she said that. It is not uncommon for either mothers, wives, or girlfriends of a male deceased to scream and go ballistic. It isn't. That's one reason why I'm on scene as chaplain. I'm there to take care of them while the first responders and fire police are dealing with the scene and the victim or deceased when I'm there as a chaplain and not a first responder. And let me tell you, I've had women bang on my chest. I've had men, grab and break down and scream and cry. I've had some of them stand there just frozen and no emotion and just absolutely like, there is a big range. And okay, love, there is a huge range of things that can happen. And you can't judge one person against anybody else. If I was on scene and one of my ex-husband, but at the time, well, even now, I mean, I don't want anyone to die, but anybody that I love and I'm close to, whether it's a boyfriend, child, parent, sibling, family, I may be doing the same thing. I don't know. But for them to judge her because of that, I struggle with that. And I struggle. We've gone through what, 4 witnesses at least? I mean, this is the 3rd witness today, and nobody has coming up, and nobody has put words in her mouth that she hit him. She did this. It's her fault. Now I'm waiting for that, and it may come up with this guy, but anyway. All right. So what we're going to do is, and the inconsistencies with the reports really bother me. Those reports are supposed to be as accurate as possible. Okay, here we go.
Face the clock. Can you raise your right hand? Do you solemnly swear the evidence given to the court and jury of the case now and hearing should be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Thank you.
You can stand or sit, whatever makes you more comfortable, sir.
Stand
And just bring
or
that microphone
sit?
down to you.
That's
Thank you.
How's that?
Whenever you're
unusual
ready,
to
Mr.
hear.
Lally.
Thank
Who
you.
would stand?
Good morning, sir.
Morning.
Just
Could
saying.
you please state your name and spell your last name for the jury?
Timothy Nuttall. Last name is Nuttall, Nuttall.
And what do you do for work, sir?
What was that first
I'm a
name?
firefighter paramedic with the town of Canton.
Why is it sped
And
up?
how long have you been a firefighter paramedic in the town?
I believe 5 years and coming up on 6.
Hey, y'all, I got to back that up.
Firefighter paramedic with the town of Canton.
He's talking. That's his normal speed, y'all. I may slow his butt down.
Yes, please.
Down here.
You can stand or sit, whatever makes you more comfortable, sir.
And just bring that microphone down to you. Thank you.
How's that?
Whenever you're ready, Mr. Lally.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good morning, sir.
Morning.
Could you please state your name and spell your last name for the jury?
Timothy Nuttall. Last name is Nuttall, Nuttall.
And what do you do for work, sir?
I'm a firefighter paramedic with the town of Canton.
And how long have you been a firefighter paramedic in the town?
You may have to slow him down.
I believe 5 years and coming up on 6.
And prior to working in that capacity with the town of Canton, what, if any, other employment have you had within sort of the
Way
same
back,
field
Maude.
as far as being a paramedic?
To back up significantly, I got my EMT certification when I was still in high school through CMTI out of Weymouth. They're now owned by Brewster Ambulance. From there, I was employed by Cataldo Ambulance. I worked primarily in the city of Chelsea, running BLS transfers and eventually 911 shifts in that city, in that area of the world, if you will. From there, I decided I liked it. I decided to enroll in paramedic school. I went to the same school I went for my BLS certification, back to CMTI. I obtained my paramedic right before I turned 21. I stayed in the same area, primarily in Chelsea, and eventually edged my way into Everett a little bit and worked
He's
up there
nervous,
for
y'all.
about
He's
7
talking
years.
about-
During that time, I decided to be enroll into fire suppression side of things. So I was hired by the town of Scituate. It was put through the Mass Fire Academy out of Stowe, class 268 in Stowe, and worked for the Scituate Fire Department for about 18 months, and then transferred to the Canton Fire Department in November of 2019.
Just a couple questions about what you had just spoken about. So when you use the term sort of BLS, what does that mean?
So in EMS, there's 2 kind of branches. BLS is basic life support, which is EMT basic. Smaller skill set, if you will. Still running 911 emergencies, but that was kind of the stepping stone to see if you could do the job if you like the job, and then you can advance on to ALS, advanced life support, which is the paramedic side of things. That's a broader skill set, many more medications, many more interventions that we can perform in the field. Obviously, I enjoyed the BLS side, so I advanced to the ALS side.
Now, as far as starting with becoming an EMT, what, if any, I mentioned you went to a CMTI school, but what type of education do you require prior to getting any sort of graduating or certification or something like that? What are the classes like?
So it kind of runs the gambit for emergency medicine. You start mostly with anatomy and physiology, the human body, progresses down to how those illnesses can progress and the natures of illness. Once that's kind of understood, then we advance on to pharmacology and interventions, just basic interventions that you can do. And then the basic interventions are further progressed into more advanced interventions throughout the program. Once you complete your didactic portion, where all that is kind of in the books, you then progress to clinical time in hospital. I can't speak to the hours off the top of my head. I can't remember, but many hours in the hospital, and then you progress to your field ride time, where you're in the back of an ALS ambulance with a preceptor, performing those skills, being evaluated, and being watched to make sure you're not causing any harm or going down the wrong treatment pathways. From there, once you complete that, you sit your national paramedic written. I'm a nationally certified paramedic, so I had to sit that written, and then finally a practical examination. And once you pass all that, you're certified to be a paramedic.
And so with respect to both your training as far as becoming an EMT and then your training as far as becoming a paramedic, there's sort of a written portion and a practical portion as well. Is that correct?
Correct.
Can you use the term in there as far as a preceptor? What exactly does that mean within your field?
So a preceptor is a senior paramedic who's been practicing for, it varies from place to place, but the standard is usually 3 to 5 years, who will watch you to make sure that you're not, like I said, drifting down the wrong path in terms of treatment.
Basically what I said,
making sure that your care is adequate and not doing any harm. My preceptors that I was with, they were medics in the city of Brockton, so they had been around for a little while, and they were excellent at what they did, and they taught me quite a bit. I learned quite a bit in my ride time from them.
The roadcaster's got to be replaced.
In your role,
brand new, so it's glitching.
post getting your certification in regard to those, have you acted as a preceptor for other sort of younger, less experienced?
Yeah, so I was a field training officer for the Cataldo for a brief stint right before I left the company.
He knows this
and
stuff.
I am currently a field training officer
They're
for the town of
trying
Canton.
to qualify him as an expert.
And with respect to those certifications,
Witness
is that
an
sort
expert,
of like
I
a one-time
believe,
blessing
on
in
the team.
perpetuity, or is there a continuing educational recertification process?
Right now for the town of Canton, that's a bidded position. I submitted an application writing, and I was selected. So I am currently on my group. I am our field training officer for my group, Group 2.
Okay. And my apologies, poor question on my part. I was asking sort of more in general. So beyond the sort of preceptor sort of faction of that, just in regard to, in general, being an EMT and a paramedic, as far as your certifications are concerned, is that something that you have
EMT is basic, paramedic
continue,
is advanced.
Is there any sort of recertification process, and how often?
For those
Oh, I apologize. Okay, yes. So every 2 years, we're required, both by the national component and the state component, to complete a certain amount of hours per year for your recertification. I actually just recently recertified in March. I can't speak to the exact number of hours, but there's a national component, state component, and a local component. And the trainings are quite
Paramedic
in-depth.
administer drugs. EMT cannot.
Now, turning your attention to your work with the Canton Fire Department, how many fire stations are there within the town of Canton?
We have 2 fire stations.
Okay, that's real small.
Station 1 is 99 Revere Street, and Station 2 is 7 Sassamon Street.
And when
Okay,
you're working
whoa.
with the Canton Fire Department, is there?
I got to pause here. Where I live, we've got about 25,000 in the city limits. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. We have at least 4 that I can think of. 1, 2, 3. We have 4. 4 fire departments. They have 2. So you're telling me out of everybody, not a single one of the police officers on scene did not know an O'Keefe was a first responder? I call BS on that one.
There a typical kind of schedule
say it.
or shift
call
schedule
BS.
that you're working on?
They're close group
So
of
my
people,
my
y'all.
work schedule is I work 1 24-hour shift, 1 24-hour off, 1 24-hour shift on, and then 5 consecutive 24s off.
And as far as the 24-hour shift, what time to what time does that run with the Canton Fire?
For us, we report it 0800 to 0800.
So 8 a.m. to 8 a.m.?
Yes.
And within both of those station houses,
So they work
how
2
much
out of 8
sort of
days?
apparatus or how many
Wow.
different sort of vehicles and apparatus do you have within each of those station houses?
For Station 1, 99 Revere
Wow,
Street,
that's not
we
very many
have
departments.
Car 5 staffed with a captain. We have Engine 3 staffed with 1 lieutenant, 2 firefighters, and Ambulance 1, who is staffed with two firefighters. We do have a PB waiver, so we will run paramedic basic on Ambulance 1. However, that is primarily a double medic ambulance. And for Station 2, it's a very similar setup. It is Engine 4 with 2 firefighters and a lieutenant, and Ambulance 2 with the same setup as Ambulance 1. Both those stations also have ladders that run out of them, ladder 1 and ladder 2 respectively. And the crews from...
I just thought of something, y'all. Do you not find it strange that a police officer did not go knock on the door of the house and say, "Sir, you have a deceased or possibly deceased person on your yard"? I have been where they have found a guy that passed away in someone's yard. He was a homeless man. They immediately went to the door and knocked on the door and said, "Sir, madam, are you aware there's a deceased person in your yard? That's why we're here. Just wanted to let you know." Why did they not do that? That is strange. 2 fire stations. Somebody knew. I call BS.
Ambulance 1
That needs
or
to be my
Ambulance 2
second
will
shift.
cross-band those ladders as
My
needed.
first one is, in my humble opinion. My second,
Now-
I call BS.
With respect, if I could turn your attention to January 28th into January 29th, sort of Friday into a Saturday. Do you recall 2022? Do you recall those days? Were you working one of those 2 days?
I was scheduled to work the morning of the 29th, I believe.
You were scheduled to work essentially the morning, 8 a.m. on the 29th until 8 a.m. on the 30th. And prior to, or the 28th sort of going into the 29th, what, if anything, were you aware of as far as weather that had been forecasted or that was reported to come?
I was aware that there was a significant storm, supposedly. Well, there was a significant storm coming through. I woke up very early that morning just to check. I took a peek outside of my house. I live in the city of Brockton. I noticed that the conditions were, it was starting to snow a little bit. So I got up early and got ready for work and left earlier than I normally do.
And about what time, which station were you assigned to on that?
I was at Station 1, 99 Revere Street, and I was on Ambulance 1 for the day.
And about what time did you arrive at Station 1?
Due to the inclement weather, I believe I arrived several hours early. I showed up to the station around 5:45, 5:50 that morning.
And around the time that you were driving from your home to Station 1 in Canton, what, if anything, did you note as far as sort of driving conditions, visibility, anything else?
The snow was starting to accumulate. The roads, I drove through several towns, but the roads were starting to be treated, but they weren't pristine. There was obviously a buildup of snow starting on my ride, which was part of the reason I left early, just either to relieve people if they needed to get out before the storm really hit, or just to help them with snow removal.
And to that point, when it comes to sort of snow removal at the fire station, what, if any, sort of duties and responsibilities do yourself and the other firefighters have to in relation to snow removal around the station?
So we're responsible around the station to keep what we refer to as the apron clear of snow. The apron is where we back our fire trucks into and out of the station. So we remove all that ourselves. We have a plow truck. However, we'll also shovel walkways and stuff for the public if they need to get in. So that was one of the primary. For the crew was actually outside removing snow when I pulled in to the station that morning.
And it may be pretty self-explanatory, but as far as the apron itself, why is it so necessary that the apron remain clear as far as snow?
The vehicles
Just
have to enter and exit
to
safely.
maintain a path for the emergency apparatus to get in and out in a timely manner.
Now,
Safe manner, not just timely, safe.
beyond sort of the snow accumulation that you noted on your way to work that day, what, if anything else, did you note as far as the weather conditions, whether it be temperature, winds, anything to that effect?
They were approaching blizzard conditions. It was windy. It was still very early in the morning, so it was quite dark, and it was windy and snowy. So we were approaching blizzard conditions, like I said.
And when you arrived there, did a call come into your station
Bailey would
sometime
actually
around
say,
or shortly
that's
after
not
6
blizzard,
o'clock
come to
in the
Canada
morning on
and
the
see
29th?
blizzard.
Yeah, I arrived, as I previously stated, around 5:50. I had put my firefighting structural gear, out with ambulance one, just in the event that there was an emergency. And as I was doing that, the emergency tones went off for a medical.
Do you recall what was the report in regard to, what was the dispatch in regard to as far as the medical was concerned?
The overhead dispatch came in as a unresponsive male in a snowbank at 34 Fairview Road, outside. Unclear any further information. So when that came on, we had one of the paramedics that morning and one of the firefighters who was a relatively new firefighter. I made the decision to step onto the ambulance to provide an extra set of hands as one of the more senior paramedics in the station at the time.
And correct me if I'm wrong, when you step onto the ambulance, you're essentially still sort of getting your gear on and getting dressed, right?
Correct. I was, as the tones were going off, and because I came in so early, I was still in civilian clothing. I had a Canton Fire t-shirt on. So I actually donned my turnout gear for that call.
And as far as the other
Turnout gear is the heavier
on that
of the gear.
ambulance one that were going to that call as well,
And very
who were they?
warm.
So it was firefighter paramedic
What
Anthony
they go
Flematti
into,
and firefighter EMT
fire.
Matt Kelly.
structural
And
fire
Mr.
gear.
Kelly, he was sort of the less experienced one at that time, is that correct?
Correct.
So you get into the back of the ambulance and start going to the scene. Now, as far as other sort of vehicles or apparatus, who, if anyone, or what, if any, other sort of vehicles were dispatched on this call as well?
The initial dispatch was Canton Engine 3 and Canton Ambulance 1. Due to the severity of the call, depending on how it comes in, the shift commander, which is car 5, he will usually respond to any significant incident. So he also added himself to the call, just as a senior officer with us. So the final dispatch, I believe, was car 5, engine 3, and ambulance 1.
You know who was on engine 3 and who was in car 5?
Car 5 was Captain Robry. Engine 3 was Lieutenant Greg Woodbury, firefighter Frank Walsh, and firefighter Katie McLaughlin.
As far as the ambulance 1 that you were in, obviously there's somebody driving and there's somebody in the front passenger seat, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so who was driving and who was in the front passenger seat?
I don't want to speak out of turn. I honestly can't tell you who was driving. I was in the back. I was in the back patient compartment of the ambulance, just because there's only 2 seats up front. So I hopped in the back.
And so when you're in the back of the ambulance and you're going to the call, what is it that you're doing in sort of preparation for arrival?
So as I previously stated, I came in early, so I was donning my turnout gear. I had my boots and structural firefighting pants on. So I finished putting those on and I put the rest of my gear in the back. And as we were driving to the scene of the incident, I started prepping the gear that we were going to need off the initial dispatch, an unresponsive male in the snow. So I grabbed our first in bag, which has miscellaneous medical supplies, some IV supplies, and interosseous drill kit.
What he would
The
need to
airway
try to
bag,
warm
which
the
has
ba-
just a
warm
bottle
the
of
body.
oxygen, and then quite a bit of airway management supplies and our cardiac monitor. So I had all of those prepped out and ready to go. So as soon as the ambulance was in park, we
He's
could step
good.
right out, ascertain what we had, and go
He's
from
good.
there. So when the ambulance arrived on scene, I had all 3 of those bags on my person, and we were able to, the entire ambulance crew was able to step out and provide patient care.
Yeah, instead of having
And
to
as
grab
far
them.
as, if you know, approximately how
Like
much
them
time
prepared.
elapsed between the time that you hear sort of the sound go off and you get in the ambulance to the time that you arrive on scene on Fairview?
I couldn't give you an accurate estimation of the time. Like I said, I was in the back. I was trying to prep everything and get myself kind of prepped just in terms of appropriate attire. So I couldn't give you a fair estimate.
And as far as when you arrive on scene, you step out of the back of the ambulance, is that correct?
Yes.
And
What
as
does he
far as
look at
the
in his
weather
reports?
conditions where you were on Fairview,
Refresh your
what, if
memory.
any, difference was there between the weather conditions there versus the weather conditions when you were arriving at the station?
I remember, as I previously stated, I remember it was still very dark. The sun was not up yet. I remember the wind. It was quite windy that morning. The wind had, in my opinion, had seemed to have picked up since my drive in, and the snow was increased.
And so when you step out of the ambulance, can you describe for the jury sort of where you go and sort of what is it that you
Plain and simple.
first see when you
It was
when you get out
horrible.
there?
So I stepped out of the ambulance and came around with all 3 bags. I could hear commotion. I could hear some screaming off in the distance. I couldn't really tell you where it was coming from because it was still quite dark. Came around the passenger side of the ambulance, walked in front of the ambulance. And there was a small huddle of 3 individuals and what appeared to be a human form laying in the snow. So we made our way over to that and went from there.
And when you come around the passenger side of the ambulance and you observe that and start to, are you sort of turning left or right, or how are you heading when you come around the ambulance?
I came out of the ambulance on the passenger side and I took a left.
And you make your way over to the patient on the ground, is that correct?
Correct.
And as far as the other people that you observed around the patient, how would you, or what, if any, description do you have of those?
Okay, guys, I want you to pay attention here. Look at the amount of detail this guy has given us. A lot of details, very detailed, compared to the I can't remembers from the officers. They're trained to remember.
There were 3 individuals. I believe they were all 3 of them were female. My primary focus was the individual in the snow on the ground.
As should be.
I went right to him. I kind of bypassed everybody from there and went directly to
Tunnel
that
vision
individual.
right to the victim.
Is that sort of typically how
Patient.
you approach a scene, is just sort of tunnel vision right for the patient?
Typically on a call like that, where if somebody's unresponsive on the ground, you typically go directly to the patient and ascertain if they are breathing and if they have signs of
Yes,
life,
so-
because that is a time-sensitive matter.
Do not wait to collect. You run.
And as far as the
No.
individual, not then, but at some point subsequent, did you learn the
You
identity
don't
of the
stop and
person on the
chit-chat.
ground?
It did. There was Officer O'Keefe, John O'Keefe.
And how was Officer Mr. O'Keefe's body positioned in relation to the ground when you first approached him?
So I found him
Oh,
supine,
did he? I got to go back on that.
laying in the snow.
Officer Mr. O'Keefe's body positioned on the ground.
Because that is a time-sensitive matter.
And as far as the individual, not then, but at some point subsequent, did you learn the identity of the person on the ground?
It did. There was Officer O'Keefe, John O'Keefe.
And how was Officer Mr. O'Keefe's body positioned in relation to the ground when you first approached him?
So I found him supine, laying in the snow.
Face up.
Immediately went to him and checked him for signs of life. We found none. We found no breathing, no pulse. So we immediately began performing high quality CPR. I was
Wait.
at the head.
Once again, I got to go back. He talks too dang fast.
We found none. We found no breathing, no pulse. So we immediately began performing high quality CPR. I was at the head of the individual, so I immediately grabbed out of our airway bag a bag valve mask and began ventilating the patient, trying to get some oxygen into him while the others on scene, like I said, began high quality CPR.
And
There is a difference between high quality and non-high
again,
quality.
maybe pretty well understood. When you use the term supine, what exactly do you mean?
He was laying on his back.
On back.
Laying on his
face up.
back, his head sort of facing up, is that correct?
Correct.
And when you are responding to a call of this nature, there's you and there's other individuals on the ambulance as well, correct?
Correct.
And is there a certain division as far as treatment and diagnosis and things of that nature are concerned between you and the other people on the ambulance?
So typically, just to use the scenario of a cardiac arrest with two paramedics, it's generally split into the airway individual or the airway
And the
monitor
compression.
and the, lack of a better term, code monitor. The airway individual will be responsible for ventilation and eventually advanced airway placement.
And
The
is
other part of that
compression and heart.
equation will monitor cardiac status, cardiac activity. They will deliver medications and a route for those medications, and they will work together to
Hopefully
monitor that patient throughout. As I said, I was on the head. I just happened to fall at the head. So I took the ventilation portion of that.
And
They're
you
done
use the
that.
term as far as a bag valve mask, is
Yeah.
that correct? And can you explain to the jury sort of what that is?
All that is it's, for lack of a better term, it's basically a glorified balloon with a mask on it. When you squeeze that bag, that forces air into the airway. So you
Better than
can
mouth to mouth.
ventilate an individual who is no longer breathing on their own.
And as far as obviously with your work with the fire department, there are sort of records or reports that are written in regard to treatment of different individuals on any given call, correct?
Correct.
Is there an acronym that's used within those reports as far as bag valve mask?
BVM.
And turning back to sort of when you initially approach where Mr. O'Keefe is,
He talks too.
if you know about how far away from, where is he in relation to, well, let me back up. Okay. So you arrive at this residence at 34 Fairview Road, correct?
Yep.
Okay. So if I'm standing on the street and I'm facing Fairview Road, is Mr. O'Keefe's body to the left, to the right, center, or something else?
I would say to the left of center.
And
Look at
what,
the
if
detail
anything,
here.
did you sort of note or observe sort of in the general area as far as where Mr. O'Keefe was?
In terms of when I got to him.
Yes.
So when I first got to him, we checked for signs of life, and I was, as stated, at the head. There was a small pool of blood that seemed to be underneath him. It was hard to ascertain, again, because of the conditions. It was still very dark. It was snowing, and it was quite windy. So we were able to check the area as best we could with our handheld lights. But that was one of the things that I noted. There was just a pool of blood.
Now, where Mr. O'Keefe's body was in relation to the roadway, if you know about how far
Well,
away,
sorry, y'all.
where was it in relation to the roadway?
I know I'm going back, but he speaks so dang fast.
Now,
As we could with our handheld lights. But that was one of the things that I noted. There was just a pool of blood.
Pool of blood.
now,
Maybe from the back of the head, from the blunt
where
import,
Mr. O'Keefe's
a
body
blunt
was
impact to the
in
head.
relation to the roadway, if you
Head
know about
believes a
how
lot.
far away, where was it in relation to the roadway?
I estimated it about where the sidewalk met the front lawn of that residence. That would be my best
And because
estimation.
it was cold, it
Do you have
wouldn't
any
flow
estimate as far
as
as footage or anything?
big and
I
far
would,
as before because
I
of
would say about
freeze.
6-8 feet, perhaps.
That's approximately 6 to 8 feet from the
Yeah.
curb.
Correct.
So you indicated that, sort of what are the first things that you're checking as far as when you first arrive at a patient for this kind of?
I'm sorry, could you repeat?
That's okay. That's okay. It's my fault. So as far as when you, let me back you up for just one second. You use the term in there as far as cardiac arrest, correct?
Correct.
Can you explain
Meaning
to the
heart not
jury what
beating.
you understand that term to mean based on your training and experience?
So cardiac arrest is the cessation of a stable cardiac rhythm in terms of life. Typically, it's either asystole, pulseless electrical activity, or VFib or VTAC. Typically, you ascertain that, but there's no pulse. You check any of the pulses, be it a femoral pulse, a carotid pulse, or a radial pulse, you will find nothing. And when that is found, you go to life-saving measures, which is CPR.
Mm-hmm.
And just in reference to one other term you used in there as far as asystole, if you could explain to the jury what you understand that term to mean based on your training experience.
Asystole, to put it as clear as I can, is a flat line. There's no electrical activity in the heart.
And so you're working sort of at the head of Mr. O'Keefe, is that correct?
Correct.
And sort of while he's still on the ground, and what is it that you're specifically sort of doing in reference to your treatment?
So I was, as we talked about earlier, I had a BVM, bag valve mask, and I had Mr. O'Keefe, I was ventilating him. So I had the mask on his face, and I was giving him positive pressure breaths with that BVM.
And as you're doing that, what, if anything else, did you observe beyond sort of the blood pooling you've already talked about, as far as any tactile observations you made of Mr. O'Keefe, any visual observations you made of Mr. O'Keefe at that point outside of the ambulance?
He was dressed for the weather. He had several layers on. Other than that, our primary focus was kind of getting him extricated and out of the elements, just because it was, as stated, conditions were suboptimal, and we wanted to get him into an environment with better lighting and some heat, so we could further assess if he had any injuries and go from there.
And so the other firefighters, paramedics, excuse me, that are on the ambulance with you, while you're doing sort of the back valve mask at his head, what, if anything, are they doing?
I believe the other firefighters that were dispatched, they were getting extrication equipment. I believe we put this individual on what we refer to as a scoop stretcher, which is basically a long plastic stretcher that we can roll an individual onto and then just pick him up, just for our safety and the safety of the patient. It's just really just a long board that we can pick up and then put onto our ambulance stretcher. So somebody was grabbing the scoop stretcher, somebody else was grabbing the ambulance stretcher, and I believe that was a coordinated effort on their part.
And I apologize for keep going back and forth, but if I could
Always
take
a
back
coordinated
one
effort.
moment
Mhm.
Before that. So when you first sort of arrived to Mr. O'Keefe, you mentioned that there are 3 females sort of huddled around. Is that correct?
Correct.
What, if anything, did you observe any of those females doing with respect to Mr. O'Keefe when you first got there?
That group seemed to be agitated. There was it was a scene of heightened emotions. As I stated, when I stepped out of the ambulance, I could hear screaming, I could hear people yelling, and it seemed just to be, that group was just quite agitated.
Okay. Breather for a minute. Lot of information being thrown out here. When he arrived, the scene was a heightened emotion, and you could hear the screaming and commotion. So why in the hell did the people in the house not know? I'm deaf. I get it. I wouldn't know, but my service dog would alert me. The lights would have woken me up. As many vehicles that was on scene. Yes, they are a little bit further away from the house than my house is from the street. But what gets me more than anything, if he is there, lights, sirens, you heard in the video that was showed from one of from both police cars that one of the sirens was still going in the video. Okay, so you still have this is hanging up on me. You still have a siren going in the video. So you've got 5 police officers, first responders, at least fire. You've got at least 12 people on scene, roughly, ballparking it. You've got a woman screaming, "Is he dead? Is he dead?" And you've got other people trying to console. Why in the hell did they not know? They knew. I cannot fathom any other reason why the people in the house didn't know that there was something going on. And I can't understand why a police officer didn't go to the house.
Agitated.
Now,
Y'all.
at some points you are able to get him on the scoop stretcher and then over to the ambulance, correct?
I
Correct.
like backboard better than
And
scoop
when you
stretcher.
get to the ambulance, what, if anything, did you note as far as what, if any, difference was there in the lighting in the back of the ambulance versus on the front lawn?
The lighting was significantly better. All of our ambulances have fluorescent lighting in the ceiling of the ambulance. So those were on, and we were able to see that there was some more injuries once we were able to get him out of his winter clothing.
And so to that point, when you sort of first get into the back of the ambulance, what is sort of the protocol? What is it that each of you are sort of doing with respect to patient care at that?
So the biggest priority
That's suspicious.
is continuous high quality CPR. And that is the biggest thing with any cardiac arrest is uninterruption of compressions. So when we got him into the back of the ambulance, we continued CPR throughout. So while multiple people were performing CPR and eventually a mechanical CPR device was applied, those compressions were uninterrupted and others were removing clothing, I honestly couldn't tell you the number of articles.
Okay, guys, if you don't know, there is a mechanical, it's new meaning in the last probably 6 years or so. I don't know. But it's a ring that goes over the body and is strapped down. And there is a paddle that goes up and down, and it is placed on the victim, and it gives precise, rhythmic, and depth compressions for the best CPR you can do. My thing is he had all these injuries and then his clothes were on. Somebody dressed him.
Of clothing, but I believe a winter jacket and a sweatshirt were removed, and then
Or he dressed himself and left, and because of the trauma to the head, passed out.
and eventually he was all the clothing was removed, and that's protocol for any cardiac arrest or any traumatic injury is usually all clothing is removed so we can have unfettered access to the individual to see if there are any other injuries.
And why is that protocol?
You mentioned earlier, sir, that there is tunnel vision. The absence of clothing kind of helps to remove that so you can see everything. You can assess everything.
And you mentioned sort of a mechanical means of CPR. Is there a specific device that's used for that?
Yes, we use a Lucas device manufactured by Stryker. And for lack of a better term, it's basically just a plunger that does CPR. It frees up a set of hands for us, and that can provide CPR uninterrupted as long as the batteries last.
Now, at
Hopefully
the time
they don't die
that
in the
you
middle.
get him into Mr. O'Keefe into the back of the ambulance and you removing some of the clothing, what, if anything, did you note at that time or at any subsequent time in regard to footwear?
To be candid, I wasn't really looking at the footwear. I believe it was brought to my attention when we eventually transferred patient care at Good Samaritan Medical Center that the individual was missing a shoe. However, that wasn't my primary focus at the time.
And the items of clothing that were removed from within the ambulance, eventually when you transfer that patient care to the hospital, what if anything happens with that?
They probably
In terms of
did.
the chain of custody of the clothing, that is typically
They
brought
probably
in
did.
either with the individual or after. And that is usually deposited on the floor of the room where that patient is. And then the hospital takes custody of it. Occasionally we'll put it in bags. However, I could not speak to where that clothing went on this.
Sorry,
Case.
guys, I'm getting a little nauseated.
But fair to say whatever clothing was taken off in the ambulance, left the ambulance at some point,
Correct.
and went to the hospital, is that correct?
Yes.
They just scoop it up and put it in a bag. They don't
Now-
enjoy it.
When you have Mr. O'Keefe in the back of the ambulance and the lighting is better,
But understand, you guys, I'm going to pause here. When a body is as cold as he was and hypothermic versus a warm body, not hypothermic, the procedures are slightly different. Sometimes once the body is warmed up, the heart will start pumping again. I'm sure this is what they were hoping for, but it did not happen.
what, if anything, did you observe following sort of the removal of the clothing, as far as what, if any, injuries did you observe to Mr. O'Keefe in that sense?
He was noted to have, and I was right at the head, he was noted to have a hematoma on the right side of his face, just above his eye on his forehead. And there was some scratches on the right arm, the upper arm.
And use the term as far as the hematoma. Could you explain what you understand that term to me?
Lack of a better term, is just an egg. He had a pretty good egg on his head.
Goose egg, big
And
bruising.
as far as anything
pulling of
beyond
blood
that,
under the
did
skin.
you observe anything or note anything beyond the egg on the head and scratches on the right arm?
As we got further down our treatment modality, we went to place an advanced airway. It was noted to have some blood, some mucus, and some bile in the back of his airway that was then suctioned out before we placed our endotracheal tube.
And what is an endotracheal tube?
So an endotracheal tube is basically, it's just a plastic tube
Breathing tube.
that is passed through the mouth into the trachea through the vocal cords. It's a definitive airway, if you will.
That's, you know.
It isolates the trachea so you can better ventilate.
Okay, guys, that is a very good question. My suspicion is if there was a fight in the house, one of two things happened. They knocked him out, dragged him out, laid him out after they dressed him, hoping he'd wake up later and go home. Or he left under his own free will after a fight. And when he got to where he was, he passed out, either due to alcohol intoxication or the injury to his head, which can happen. You can get in a bar fight and walk out after being hit in the head with a baseball bat. It knocks you a little loopy. You leave, and then you pass out 100 yards down the road. And then because of the cold, he could have died because of hypothermia. So that's very plausible, or the head injury, or a combination of. I'm seeing that as more plausible, that he left under his own abilities, but then passed out, and that's where he died. But we don't know. He could have been hit,
Your patient,
but there was no injury
and
from
you don't have to worry about any
to pelvis.
air getting into
the
the
car
stomach,
would've hit
any
him.
gastric insufflation, and that is the gold standard for cardiac
They would have seen evidence of bruising and discoloration on the skin had he been hit by a vehicle.
arrest. Is a properly placed endotracheal tube.
If not, then at the autopsy.
Mentioned there were some substances that were suctioned from his airway, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, what were they again? I'm sorry.
I believe it was blood, bile, and mucus.
And do you have any idea how much of that was suctioned?
I couldn't give you an exact number, but it was enough that we needed to set up a suction suction system to remove it before
That's
we
a lot.
intubated.
That's quite a
Just
bit.
turning briefly again to the arm. These were injuries that you observed on his right arm, is that correct?
Correct.
What, if any, injuries did you observe on his left arm?
I don't believe I saw any, to my knowledge.
And as far as your memory, as far as his right arm, how far did it sort of extend and where was it located? Sort of upper arm, lower arm, both, or where was it?
I believe it was just below his shoulder. They ran, I would say, probably 3 or 4 inches from, I would say, about the shoulder right down to maybe 2 inches above the elbow.
And as far as Mr. O'Keefe's nose, what, if any, observations did you make of that?
Initially, it was noted to be very cold. The individual was cold all around to the touch, but his nose was also quite cold, quite white, just because he had been in the elements for a little while. There appeared to be a little bit of blood on his nose as well.
And through your training experience, are you familiar with a term or a device known as an OPA?
Correct. Yes.
Can you explain to the jury sort of what OPA stands for and what is that device? What is it?
So an OPA, or oral pharyngeal airway, is basically a small plastic device that is curved. And when inserted into the mouth, all it does is it prevents the tongue from falling backwards into the airway and occluding the airway. It's relatively simple, but it's very effective in keeping an airway open.
Just turning back for one moment to the injuries that you observed on Mr. O'Keefe's right arm, were those injuries that were actively bleeding at the time that you observed them?
No.
What, if anything, did you observe as to that in reference to those injuries on the arm?
Those injuries seem to have been congealed. In my opinion, it looked like they had been cold, which could have aided in the clotting of those injuries. But when we observed them, they were not bleeding.
And you mentioned a little bit about Mr. O'Keefe's nose. What, if any, observations?
Okay, as cold as it was, that blood is not going to run for very long. It's going to freeze pretty dang quick, just like water. Maybe just a hair longer because it's thicker, but blood will freeze quickly. So it's not like you can cut yourself pretty deep and be in that snow, and within a few minutes, it freezes.
Observations did you make as far as any sort of digits, whether they be his hand, his feet, or something else?
So all of his digits on the upper extremities were noted they were very cold. They were immobile. They were very stiff. I'm presuming due to the exposure, because we did, when we got him onto the ambulance, when we were removing clothing, it was noted that all of his digits were very stiff. They were immobile, and it caused a little bit of problems just trying to get clothing off of him, just because they were so stiff.
And taking you back outside of the ambulance just for a moment, when you're sort of initially there and you're doing your
Could have been
assessment,
rigor mortis.
and the 3 females are in your general area, correct?
Correct.
And at some point, you or any of the other paramedics or EMTs on scene ask them any questions about what had happened or anything like that?
So as I was ventilating at the head, there was a small delay in just getting equipment, nothing significant, just enough time that as I was ventilating, I was able to ask, did anybody see anything? What happened? And there was one individual that replied several times, I hit him.
And did you know that individual at that time?
I did not.
Can you describe the individual that said that?
I would describe her as mid-40s, average build, average height. And the other two, very similar.
And with reference to that statement of I hit him, is that something that she said once or more than once or something?
It was several times.
And as far as the tone or demeanor, how loudly was this being said?
As previously stated, it was, they seemed to be erratic. There was a lot going on in that scene. It did seem to be said over and over and at varying volumes. And then there was just a lot of, everybody appeared to be quite flustered.
Okay, so why did the police
And
not
the
hear it
individual,
if they
one
were
of the
standing
three
right
females
there?
that said that, what if any observations did you make as to her face or anything?
The individual that said, I hit him, appeared to have some blood on her face, presumably for attempting CPR prior to our arrival.
And you say presumably attempting CPR. When you first arrived at Mr. O'Keefe, what, if anything, did you observe any of the females doing with reference to Mr. O'Keefe?
Mr. O'Keefe was not being touched by any individual when I first got to him. That whole group was kind of pacing around, lack of a better term, kind of running around in circles. But Mr. O'Keefe was not being, there was no interventions being done to Mr. O'Keefe when I got to him.
Whoa. Let's
And
stop. Let's stop right there. I'm writing. Okay, let's stop right there. Every police officer is trained as a first responder. They're trained in basic life skills. They test on CPR. They have to maintain their CPR certification. So why in the sandblasted hell, if Karen Reed stopped CPR and got up, that the first police officer or any other one on scene did not take over? I stated yesterday that I witnessed a guy in front of me hit a guy. Okay. And it was in the middle of the night. There was a drunk guy that stepped out in the road wearing all dark clothes. It wasn't the guy's car in front of me's fault. I was the first one to start CPR on that guy. I hopped out of the car. I thought he hit a deer at first. Then when I went around to the front of his car, I see a shoe in the road. A shoe, not two, one. I run over to the side of the road and see a body. He was face down. I turned him appropriately to protect the C-spine and all that. I started CPR on that dude right away. Mind you, he had a mouthful of dirt. I mean, it was horrible. So I'm pumping chest right away. Then an officer shows up on scene. I'm doing CPR all by myself. As soon as they showed up, no questions asked, took over the pumping because I was tired. It was 3 to 5 minutes. That's a long time. You get exhausted. And I took over the head. He took over the chest. Why was the police officer, once CPR is started, you don't stop? And they know that. What was his name? I'm having a hard time remembering. Officer Saraff. Why did he not immediately take over the CPR? Once it started on scene and any person, first responder, police, EMS, firefighter, anybody shows up on scene, and if I'm talking about, I'm sorry, if anybody shows up on scene, once they see CPR start, they have to continue CPR until they get to the hospital. And then, and only then, will the hospital physician declare, after they attempt, why in the Sam hell did he stand there? Even if the women stopped, it's his responsibility to take over that CPR. You can't. I am like, this is a triple holy y'all. I'm going off here. I'll get back to court while I calm down, but that right there is a huge red flag. Huge red flag.
Clear sort of when you're in the back, fast forwarding now to sort of in the back of the ambulance.
It's okay, baby.
You're, again, sort of focused on the respiratory in the head, correct?
Correct.
And who, if anyone else from your department is in the back of the ambulance, and what, if anything, are they doing at that?
So at that point, I had myself and Nat Kelly, EMT Kelly. He was kind of with me for the head. One of the, for lack of a better term, easier operations of a cardiac arrest is ventilation. So Matt Kelly was assisting me with ventilations, is just squeezing the BVM to provide ventilation. The lead paramedic for the cardiac arrest was Anthony Flematti. He was running everything else. He was running the application of the cardiac monitor. He was monitoring the status of medications being administered. He was assisted with that by Katie McLaughlin, Lieutenant Woodbury, and Firefighter Walsh.
And at some point, did Firefighter Flematti, excuse me, at this point that you're in the back of the ambulance, you don't have any sort of demographic information in regard to your patient, correct? So what, if anything, did Firefighter Flematti ask anybody else to do in regard to obtain?
I believe he asked Firefighter McLaughlin to exit the ambulance and gather some information from the bystanders in terms of name, date of birth, any significant medical history or medications, just so we could further treat the patient.
And to the best of your knowledge, Firefighter McLaughlin leaves the ambulance to do that, is that correct?
Correct.
But you weren't present for any of that, correct?
No.
So there's some period of time in the back of the ambulance and then the transport to Good Samaritan happens, is that correct?
Correct.
Recall where different people from your department were in relation to that transport to the hospital?
So the transport in the back in the patient compartment was myself, Firefighter Kelly, and Firefighter Flematti, with Firefighter McLaughlin driving ambulance 1.
I'm speechless. I'm still speechless.
Yes.
I'm sorry. I have to adjust. I am so speechless.
When it comes to the report that we were that you were testifying about before, there was a report generated in regard to this. Is that correct?
Correct.
And who has the sort of duty and responsibility of compiling that?
That would have been Anthony Flematti.
And have you seen Firefighter Flematti's report in relation to this incident?
I have.
May I approach the witness, John?
Yes.
I don't know how to spell that name. We're just going by that. I'm guessing on the spelling. Oh, guys, I am still reaming over the fact that CPR was halted. I understand the girls halting it because they are exhausted. They're panicked. They don't know what the hell they're doing. But when you have multiple police officers on scene, they have to continue CPR. They know this. Maybe different in their state, but God, once you start, you don't stop. Period. Until a doctor pronounces that they're deceased. That right there alone pisses me off. It's exhausting. I've done CPR to the point where I thought my arms was going to fall off and my back was going to break. But you don't stop under any condition until the person is declared. And that can only be done once started.
Do you recognize that, sir?
I do.
What do you recognize
that? This is what I believe to be the NFIRS report written by Captain Robery and the patient care report written by Firefighter Flematti.
Thank you, sir. May I approach, John?
Yes.
I'm up and seek to introduce and admit as the next exhibit, I believe.
It's already pre-marked, or you're moving to introduce it now? Is there an objection?
May have just moving on.
Okay.
I wish I can get a correct spelling of that name, but it's okay. I'll be right back.
Patient care report.
All right, that will be marked, Madam Court Reporter, please.
160.
And
thank you very much.
Saraff, Sir, if I could ask for the lights in the little. And Ms. Gilman, if I could have what's been previously marked as exhibit number 9. Mr. Nuttall, just directing your attention up to the screen there and what's been previously marked as exhibit number 9. Do you recognize what's depicted in that photograph?
I do.
What do you recognize?
I believe that's B34 Fairview Road.
Is that a relatively fair and accurate portrayal of what it looked like around the time that you arrived there, absent sort of lighting conditions and things of that nature?
Yes.
And Ms. Gilman, if I could have exhibit number 18.
Sorry about that, y'all. What did I miss? Did I miss anything good?
May I approach the witness, Your Honor?
Yes.
All right.
And Mr. Nuttall, if I could ask you, using that laser pointer before you, well, first let me ask, do you recognize what's up on the screen as
Sparkles, are you still on?
Yeah. Again, 34
That
Fairview
should
Road.
have been deleted.
And the area where you first observed Mr. O'Keefe supine on the lawn and the 3 females around, you see that area in this photograph?
I do.
And if you could, using that laser pointer, just direct the
Just so you know, we don't talk like that on my channel.
So sorry. I would say right around this general area, right about here.
It's not the place for that kind of behavior.
And lastly,
the block party.
Ms. Gilman, if I could have exhibit number 14.
Did I miss anything, Sparkles?
And again, sir, do you recognize what's up on the screen as exhibit number 14?
I do.
What do you recognize that?
That I believe to be is where we found Mr. O'Keefe.
Okay, thanks.
And as far as the pooling of the blood that you observed around Mr. O'Keefe's head, you observed that area within this photograph as well?
Yes.
You could, again, using that laser pointer, just direct the jury's attention to where in this photograph you observed that.
They're right around in this general area. There.
You see a little bit of blood.
Saraff, so we can have the lights back up.
Is that a
Your Honor, may I
shoe or
approach just to
footprint?
retrieve that?
Yes.
Gosh.
I have no further questions for this witness at this time, ma'am.
All right, cross-examination.
Thank you, Your Honor.
I'm not a crazy Karen. I'm someone who knows what the hell I'm talking about.
Afternoon.
When a life is
Sir,
involved,
how are you?
those minutes.
You were coming on, I want to make sure I
Yeah.
get the timing right. You were coming off of nearly a 24-hour shift when you got the call,
No, sir. I was reporting for duty that morning.
just starting the shift when you got the call. Understood. I want to ask one quick question that you mentioned just a couple of seconds ago under questioning by Mr. Lally. With regard to the clothing, the normal protocol for clothing that's removed from a patient,
Yes.
you said it's oftentimes just sort of discarded onto the floor.
In terms of in the ambulance or at the hospital?
Either one.
Yes.
Okay, both?
So typically, when we remove clothing in the back of the ambulance, it's generally done with trauma shears. So we will expose and then kind of fold over. That clothing is then usually left in place. We'll do a quick roll just to check the back of the patient, and then he's usually rolled back if there's nothing found, and it's typically left there.
Well, we got some
in
trolls,
terms of
Sparkle.
like big puffy jackets, if you cut a puffy jacket, it just makes quite the mess. So yeah, exactly. It's a disaster. So typically those bigger jackets are just removed, and that is when we removed that type of article of clothing, that's when we noticed that his hands were quite rigid.
So that's what happened in this case.
Correct.
You removed the big heavy jacket, discarded it, got it away from the body so you could better assess the injuries.
Correct.
And it was only then, after you removed this big heavy winter coat, that you could assess that his hands were stiff and cold.
We noted the hands, but it came more into light, if you will, when we removed that coat.
Got it. And you have as good a memory about that as you do the rest of the scene that morning.
In terms of removing the article of clothing?
Correct.
I did not remove any article of clothing. I was ventilating.
But you remember him having the big jacket on.
Correct.
Okay. And you remember that as well as you remember the other specifics of the incident.
Yes.
Okay. When responding to a scene, I want to dovetail on the same subject, but just come at it in a little bit different way, if you would indulge me. When responding to a scene, one of your jobs has to be to sort of immediately take note of and assess the situation of the patient that you're dealing with, correct? A motorcycle accident is going to be very different than a drowning.
Exactly.
Someone, in this case, exposed in a snowbank, you're going to deal with or assess and note the weather.
Mm-hmm.
Is that yes?
Yes.
You're also going to note and assess the condition of the patient.
Correct.
As it pertains to the weather.
Yes.
So someone, for instance, that's in a snowbank naked,
mm-hmm.
no clothes on at all, is going to be a little bit different assessment than someone who's completely dressed for winter, correct?
No, I'm not a lawyer. I say
The
that
initial
at the beginning
assessment
of my
with
podcast.
every patient is going to be
also-
automatically circulation, airway, breathing.
Okay. No, I'm not a lawyer. I am going to school for criminal justice. That's why I'm an alternate juror. But I am a first responder, volunteer firefighter, and emergency services chaplain. When it comes to this type of subject, I am very knowledgeable, but I am not a lawyer, nor do I pretend, and this is not legal advice.
Understood.
We approached this individual the exact same way. Is automatically went directly to cardiac. Make sure.
I guess what I'm asking is your attention is focused on some of those details for sure.
Correct.
And that's how you remember that big heavy coat that he was wearing, correct?
I remember he was appropriately dressed. Correct.
Okay. As a matter of fact, you testified to that in the grand jury that, quote unquote, he had a heavy coat on.
Yes.
Consistent with how you're testifying today. Is that right?
Correct.
All right. Your Honor, I'd like to mark 2 photographs as next in order. They have not yet been marked. I believe it would be 160.
It doesn't matter so much the number, but why don't you just show the prosecutor the photos?
161 and 162 in order.
Seriously?
May I approach?
Yes.
Dude, my best friend got her PhD
Yes,
at
sir.
70. Bye-bye. Enjoy the block party.
I'm going to ask you, first of all, whether you recognize what's in
Y'all.
those photos.
Honestly, sir, I couldn't recall the exact, but yeah.
You do recognize them?
Yes.
Does that appear to be what John O'Keefe was wearing when you found him?
I don't recall, sir, to be perfectly honest.
May I approach you?
Yes.
Do you recall this being part of, let me ask you a different way. Do you remember somebody cutting this off of John O'Keefe at the time?
I remember the clothing being removed.
Okay.
As to the extent of what, he doesn't remember, which is...
I could say that he had clothing removed, but I couldn't tell you exactly what it was.
And you've just looked at these. This, what I'm holding in my hand, appears to be the front and back of a...
So don't hold it up to him from that distance where he said he doesn't recognize it. You can put it back in front of him.
Ooh,
Don't hold it up for the
she
jury,
is
please.
May I?
So,
Yes.
she is on the ball for the rules, and I appreciate it.
That appeared to be a thin cotton hoodie.
Yeah, that appears to be a thinner layer of clothing.
Okay. May I approach?
Yes.
Not a heavy coat.
Y'all,
Is that fair?
Fair.
Not a winter jacket.
Fair.
I don't have a Karen attitude. But when it comes to somebody's life, I can get a little tissy.
Is it fair to say you had a lot on your mind when you were out at that scene, correct?
In terms of just the car.
Saving a man's
There.
life.
Correct.
That's your credentials are impressive. You were there focused on one thing, and that is trying to make sure that a man did not die.
Correct.
Would you agree that that was your primary concern and your primary focus the entire time you were at the scene?
Correct.
You weren't necessarily worried about what other individuals were doing, correct?
No.
If I asked you right now off the top of your head, tell me exactly the number of law enforcement officers that were there at the scene, probably couldn't tell me, could you?
No.
A lot.
If I asked you whether or not you remember every single civilian that was at the scene, probably couldn't tell me, correct?
Outside of the 3?
Outside of the 3.
Correct.
Any other civilians?
Not that I noted.
Okay. Matter of fact, you can't even identify the 3 civilians, other than generally middle-aged, 40s, Caucasian, female?
Correct.
You said all 3 of them sort of looked alike, right?
Without the only defining feature on one of the individuals was one of the individuals did have blood on their face.
So
And this is normal.
some of the specifics of that scene you didn't pay special note to, correct?
No, we were focused on patient care.
That's very normal.
Is it fair to say that, specifically as it pertains to what the victim was wearing, your memory might be a little faulty where that's concerned?
Sure.
Okay.
It's
I mean,
rapid
nothing
and
wrong with
fast,
that.
man.
You're
They're not
focused on
taking
something
inventory and
completely
taking pics.
Correct.
You did notice certain injuries on Mr. O'Keefe's person, correct?
Correct.
And you indicated on direct examination that once you got him into the back of the ambulance, you, as you put it, you had a quote unquote much better picture of what you were dealing with. Is that right?
Correct.
You testified at the grand jury that you noted that once he was in the back of the ambulance, under better lighting, you were able to tell that he had trauma to the right side of his head.
Correct.
Is that right?
Yes.
Are you talking about the major trauma that he suffered to the back of his head, or the egg that you earlier described?
I was more just because it was directly in front of me. It was on the front side of his head.
Okay, so it wasn't the right side of his head. If you said right side of your head, you might point above your ear, right?
Correct,
That's not
yes.
what you're talking about.
I was, and if, to use my person, I would say right here. So more towards the right, above his right eye.
Right of center, but still on the front of his head.
Correct.
And you did not make any note of another injury on the back of his head.
No.
May not have been able to see it because they were too busy trying to preserve life, and he was laying face up.
You talked about the injuries to the right side of his arm, correct?
Correct.
You noted that those injuries appeared to be scratches.
Yes.
That's your word, not mine, right?
Correct.
You didn't say that those were blunt force trauma.
No.
I don't know what the judge
didn't
is
say that
doing,
they were
but that noise
abrasions?
is irritating.
Scratches and abrasions,
Your
in
Honor.
my point of view, seem to go hand in hand.
But the word that you used was scratches.
Yes, there were
Like,
like
Scratch
furrows
abrasion.
down,
say that again?
furrows, if you will, for lack of a better term. Just
I don't understand that word.
so if you remove something,
Yes.
like you create a furrow in the skin, is that?
Furrows.
Yes, there you go. Sorry, excuse my accent.
Oh, no. I'm on your turf.
Fair enough.
It's my accent. I'm so sorry. Boy, that one, it's going to be a meme somewhere.
Hey, my cousin Vinny.
Yeah, got it.
Oh,
All right, so
he's got
when
a
you said
personality. I like him.
furrows, you made your hand in almost like a claw and drug it against your right biceps.
Objection.
Sustained.
Can you repeat the movement that you did for the jurors and you said furrows?
Objection.
Sustained. Just move
What?
on to the next question, please.
Boy, she's
You would agree that a
rigid.
very common cause of a hematoma over one's eye is being hit or punched.
Correct.
Is that right?
Yes.
You said that Mr. O'Keefe did have such a hematoma over his right eye, correct?
Yes.
Did you also see a laceration under the eyebrow but above the lid on his right eye?
I don't recall.
Did you see a laceration on Mr. O'Keefe's nose?
I don't recall.
You did note that there was some blood on his nose, correct?
Correct.
Is that possible that came from a small laceration?
Yes.
Say over here.
In your experience,
Noise is driving me crazy.
well, let me ask another question. Did it look like he had, in addition to the egg on the right side of his head,
Mhm.
in the front, did it also have a black eye on the left side?
If memory serves correct, yes.
So both eyes were blackened.
Primarily the right side, if memory serves.
Okay. And the laceration toward the right side
Yes.
of the right eye. Are those injuries that you just described consistent or inconsistent with some sort of physical altercation?
Objection, Your Honor.
Sustained.
Sustained. Next question, please.
Did it appear to you, just from your initial assessment, given your experience, training, and background, that those injuries looked like he had been in a fight.
Objection.
I'll see counsel at sidebar.
Y'all, I really like this judge. I really like this judge because there's no talking objections. It is awesome. I like this judge. She's on the ball, to the point, clean and clear boundaries, no wavering, and the fact that there is no speaking objections. I'm enjoying this. I have not seen in a while a trial this clean. She has great control of her courtroom. Oh, no questions. And everything is clean. I really like it. Boy, Sparkles, have you seen the trolls? Am I that fat? And am I being a Karen? Let me know, Sparkles. If I get too out of control, you know where the mods private chat is. You can always chat and say, "Hey, girl, you need to calm down." But I'm really. I deleted them. He called me fat, and then he said I was being a Karen and I was too old to be going to school. And yeah, it's been nasty. The trolls have been nasty today. Guess what? They're enjoying a block party. Grab a margarita and have fun together. But when it comes to this situation where they stopped CPR, it blew my mind.
Thank you.
Sir.
A little break.
Oh, I understand.
In your experience as obviously a training firefighter, tell me the word again that you used.
Field training officer or preceptor.
Thank you. As a field training officer, have you seen in your experience the product or the injuries that can be produced from fist fights?
He needs to qualify it before you ask.
Injuries to the face.
Yes.
Injuries to the mouth. Injuries to the nose.
Yes.
The ears.
Yep.
To the eyes. Defensive wounds on the hands.
Yes.
Did you note we've already talked about, and I don't want to go over all this again. You've already noted what the injuries to the face were that you saw Mr. O'Keefe having suffered.
Yes.
Were those consistent or inconsistent with a physical altercation?
I couldn't say.
Were they consistent or inconsistent with being in a fight?
I couldn't say.
Was that egg over his right eye consistent or inconsistent with him having been punched or hit?
I couldn't say.
I thought you said that one of the common causes of an egg like that, a hematoma, as you put it, over someone's eye, is being hit or punched.
There's quite a few reasons that somebody could get an egg, such as that over their head. You could get hit with a golf ball.
Of course.
For instance.
I'm not asking you to the exclusion of everything else. I'm asking you, is it consistent?
It's consistent. It could be.
Okay.
Could be.
Any other injuries
Good,
as well?
he got it in.
Correct.
Okay. Did you see bruising to the back of one or both of his hands?
His hands were, as stated, they were very cold and very white. They were not well perfused. And when you don't have adequate perfusion, swelling and smaller injuries don't typically present themselves, if you will.
So you may not have seen that.
Correct.
The bruising may have been there.
It might have been there. It just wasn't observable just due to the condition of his hands.
Just may have overlooked.
Yes.
Okay. You indicated that you were not present when your colleague, Katie McLaughlin, was questioning anybody at the scene, correct?
Correct.
She was tasked with that responsibility, but you did not engage with her.
Correct.
Meaning, when I say engage with her, you weren't standing there with her.
No, I was in the back of the ambulance.
Okay. You claim to have heard this statement, I hit him,
yes,
several times from the woman with blood on her face.
Correct.
You indicated that she was erratic.
Correct.
Hysterical.
Correct.
You said, for lack of a better term, running around in circles.
Yes.
She seemed despondent or distraught.
Very distraught.
Very upset.
Yes.
Was she saying anything else that you recall?
To me, I heard I hit him, and then I went back, obviously continuing on patient care, focusing on patient care.
Did you hear her say, could I have hit him?
I heard I hit him.
That's what you believe at this point?
That's what I heard.
Okay. Where exactly were you?
I was crouched at the head of Mr. O'Keefe.
Okay.
Until
You were
taken
asked
to the
that
EMS unit
exact
before you
question
stayed.
at the grand jury, correct? To describe where you were and who was doing what?
To my knowledge, yes.
Okay. You were asked a question when you spoke to her and she said, I hit him. Were you were you with the other representatives, sir, there at the time? Were there other people around you? You remember being asked that question by a grand juror?
I don't recall.
Do you remember answering, no, there were other people around me. I had paramedics Flematti with me. I believe firefighter Kelly was there as well.
Correct. So the three of us were all providing patient care
Okay.
around
Doesn't mean they all
Mr.
heard
O'Keefe.
Because they
And you indicated that we were all there together. You were kneeling and you were doing the airway while you called him Tony.
Yes, that's Anthony, Tony. Yes.
All right. He was doing the CPR, correct?
Correct.
And it's absolutely clear in your mind that when that statement was made, you were knelt down over Mr. O'Keefe. Flematti was doing CPR. Kelly was with you guys, and you posed the question to her, do you know him? Correct?
Correct.
Great. So I want to make sure I understand this. You said, as you're knelt down, do you know him, directly to the female, and she answered your question with, I hit him.
Yes.
But that's not what you told Trooper Proctor in a February 8th interview.
Okay. I don't recall what I told Trooper Proctor.
Let's start at the beginning. Do
Okay.
you remember having a conversation with Trooper Proctor on February 8th?
I do.
That was obviously much closer in time than your grand jury testimony, correct?
Correct.
And years closer in time than your testimony now.
Correct.
Do you recall on February 8th telling Trooper Proctor that while you were rendering aid, you heard Karen say, I hit him, to another female on the scene?
To another female, as I stated, I heard several times I hit him. In terms of who that was directed towards, I mean, again, focused on patient care.
Understood. My question was a little bit different. Do you recall telling Trooper Proctor specifically that while you were rendering aid, you heard Karen say, I hit him, to another female on the scene, and the other female told Karen to be quiet?
I do recall that.
Okay. That's not what you testified to today, though.
Okay.
Matter of fact, that story has changed to you posed a question and she answered your question, correct?
Correct.
So which is it?
So when ventilating a patient, typically that is also used to gather information from bystanders, because as I'm ventilating, I can real quick look around. Do you know this individual? Do you know anything about this individual? That's fairly typical for any
He's not
scenario
answering the
in
question.
this. It's a very quick information gathering strategy.
But you'll agree that your testimony today has changed from what it was
It
in your
appears so.
statement to Trooper Proctor on February 8th.
I don't know if it would so much say change, sir. To be honest, I don't fully recall that meeting with Mr. Proctor.
So you don't, I'm sorry.
I remember meeting with him. However, I don't fully remember what was discussed.
So it's fair to say that your memory is a little bit faulty as it pertains to that time frame.
Absolutely.
Sparkles, I have to go relieve the service dog. I'll be right back.
When you went to the hospital with the patient, did you ever inform any of the doctors or nurses or medical professionals at the hospital that you had heard a female claim to have hit John O'Keefe and that's the reason for his injuries?
I did not give the report to the hospital.
So the answer to that is no.
No.
You did not. As a first responder and a medical professional yourself, obviously you know that the cause and manner of a victim's injuries are incredibly important as it pertains to assessing how to treat that patient.
Correct.
Once you got back to the station and to take a breath, did you write any report?
I'm here.
I did not. No, I did not write the patient care report.
So you didn't write a report, just to finish my question, you didn't write a report that said, by the way, while I was out at the scene, I heard a female say, I hit him, and that's the cause and manner of the injuries.
Not to my knowledge.
Well, you would know if you wrote a report that said that.
Correct.
And you did not.
I did not write the patient care report.
Okay. At any time that day or any day subsequent thereto, did you contact the Canton Police Department, which were the first responders?
I did not.
So let me finish my question. And say, by the way, just so you know, I heard this woman say, I hit him out of the scene.
I did not.
Did you ever, on that day or any day subsequent thereto, contact the
Why did
Massachusetts
you?
State Police?
It's your responsibility.
Say, I heard this person say I hit him.
I did not.
So the first time you ever repeated that statement was on February 8th with Trooper Proctor.
Correct.
And by the time we've come full circle to today, that statement has now pivoted.
In terms,
You didn't you didn't overhear the person say it to a female. Now she's talking directly to you now.
she spoke directly to me, yes.
After
Have you-
the patient was
just one
taken
last
to the
point.
hospital and all was said and done, he
You've
should have
obviously noted
contacted
that this case has gotten an
the
enormous amount of
investigator and
notoriety, correct?
informed him.
Correct.
How many times would you say that you've discussed this case and this incident with your fellow firefighters?
It's brought up around the station semi-frequently. However, being
Why?
involved in it, we try to stay clear of it just because we are involved in it.
So the answer is, there's been many discussions,
Yes,
probably daily.
frequently.
You're not
Have any of
supposed
those
to be talking about it
discussions
if you're a witness.
Helped you with what you earlier described as a little bit of a faulty memory around that time frame?
Objection, Your Honor.
He can have that. Have they?
Repeat the question for me, sir.
Sure. Have any of those discussions helped you with what you earlier described as a little bit of a faulty memory?
The memories that I have and the ones that I'm bringing up, I don't believe that they've changed. You know, I've played them over in my head to the best of my ability, and I don't believe my story is swayed. If they've been enunciated incorrectly on my part, that it wasn't intentional.
Understood. And,
Yeah.
and nobody's casting aspersions. Memory's a funny thing. So your memory is as good about that as it is about that winter coat.
Yes, sir.
Thanks. That's all I have.
Mr. Lally?
They talk about things, but they need to when they're case not to. Once you do the
No, when
debriefing,
it
you should
comes
talk
to
about it.
being asked about consistency of causality as far as different injuries that you observed on Mr. O'Keefe, correct?
Rephrase that for me.
Sure. Poorly phrased on my part. So you would have been asked on cross-examination about some things that the injuries you observed on Mr. O'Keefe could be consistent with as far as having been the cause of those, correct?
Correct.
And how many sort of myriad of other causality or how many myriad of other sort of things could have also been a cause of the injuries that you observed?
As stated, a lot. It's not typically just physical altercations. It could be, again, a golf ball could hit you in the head. That could cause similar injuries.
Just for clarity purposes, when you were asked about a particular time frame, were you talking about the time frame of January 29th, or were you talking about the time frame of February 8th when you met with Trooper Prof?
Sorry, so rephrase that for me.
Let me withdraw that and move on to something else. So what, just again, for clarity purposes, when you were asked about some statements that were attributed to you to Trooper Proctor during the interview, correct?
Correct.
And so with regard to what you recall differently, is it the statement that the person the female with the blood on her face made to you, or the statement of the other female telling that person to be quiet?
So as stated, real quick, down and dirty, I asked, do you know this person? To which I hit him. And then in the background, I remember hearing over and over, I hit him. That was kind of pushed towards the back, and patient care took priority, if that answers your question.
No. Who of the three
Do
women
you
said
recall
it?
specifically at this time, the other statements that you were asked about as far as whether or not the other female told that female to be quiet?
I do remember that, correct.
And the other statement as far as the female with blood on her face, and again, that was the differentiating character between the three females that you observed there, correct?
Correct.
And your memory of that statement is, I hit him, correct?
Correct.
Nothing further.
So the woman with the blood is the one who said it, which would be
All right,
Mullaney.
Mr. Nuttall, you are all set, sir.
Thank you, everybody.
Do you have another witness, Mr. Lally, to start?
Yes, sir. Your Honor, the Commonwealth will call Mr. Anthony Flematti to the stand.
I gotta get a spelling on these names, ma'am. I'm sorry, I'm having a snack, y'all. I took some medicine and it's upsetting me. I want to pause it. I want you to see something here. This is important. The woman turned sideways is the mother. Here's the father of O'Keefe. Here's his brother that testified yesterday and the sister-in-law of the victim. From our view, we are where the jury is seated. From this camera view, the jury is literally facing these people. Literally. They are so close. This courtroom is so small. And the people here behind this man with the technology are the news media and other family. But right here where my mouse is skimming, if we were sitting in the jury box, this is the exact view the jury has. That is so uncomfortably close. That is super. That guy is literally walking on the rail. The jury can almost reach out and
Raise your
touch
right hand.
him.
You solemnly swear the evidence you give the court and jury in the case now and hearing to the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
She can say you can stand or sit. I guess you can sit.
Whenever you're ready, Mr. Lally.
Good afternoon, sir. How are you? Could you please state your name and spell your last name?
Name is Anthony Flematti, last name spelled Flematti.
And how are you employed, sir?
I'm a acting lieutenant at this time for the Canton Fire Department.
And how long in total have you worked for the Canton Fire Department?
Got hired in 2015, July of 2015, so coming up on 10 years.
And prior to working with the Canton Fire Department, what, if any, other work did you have within sort of the same field?
So in the same field, I worked for the Athol Fire Department for a few years, hired in 2012, March 2012 until July of 2015. So just transferred departments.
And
The proctor
even
seems
prior
to be an
to
interesting
working with
situation.
the Metthall Fire Department, did you work as an EMT anywhere?
Yep. So I worked as an EMT for American Medical Response out of Springfield and Holyoke. Worked for Fallon Ambulance. Started basic level of EMT around 2008, and then just different private ambulance companies around the state.
My son taking care of
Just
mama.
starting with the EMT side of it for first. What, if any, training did you receive or education did you receive prior to getting your certification as an EMT?
There's different levels of certifications for EMTs. The EMT basic starts out with about 6 months, a couple nights a week for about, like I said, about 6 months. Take a certification, practical and written examination for that to get your basic level, and then you move on to the paramedic level of schooling as well.
Can you describe for the jury a little bit about sort of what that paramedic level of schooling is?
So the paramedic schooling starts, it's about 12 to 14 months, depends on the program, which school you go to. of night school 2 to 4 times a week for about 14 months. And then you start going into a clinical phase where you go into the different operating rooms, emergency rooms, OB/GYN, cardiac CCU, ICU. You do about 300 hours of education in that. Once you've completed a bunch of skill checkoffs under the supervision of an RN or a doctor, depending on the room, you would then clear that section of your schooling and then move on to a ride time phase, which is about 200 to 300 hours, depending on skills, what you need.
While he's going through
That would be either in a fire department or a private EMS under the preceptorship of a senior paramedic that would kind of walk you through how to do the job and shadow you and supervise that you're doing things appropriately. You do that for about 200 or 300 hours. You write up different documentation, basically learning how to do it out of the clinical set and then more of in the field set. After that, you would, whatever job you have at that point, you would do an additional practical assessment, again, about 6 or 7 different stages of evaluation for physical skills. Then you would do a written test, again, with the state. At that time, it was the state, Massachusetts, to certify you as a paramedic. Then after that, they have another 2 to 6 month preceptorship within the department to acclimate you to the physical location that you're working in.
And so there's a written portion and a practical portion to both the EMT as well as the paramedic training?
Yes, that's correct.
And you successfully completed that and received certifications in regard to both?
Yes.
And those certifications, are they something that is just sort of a one-time blessing, or is that something that has a continuing educational component and a recertification?
That's correct. So every 2 years, we have to do a 48-hour refresher. So it's continuing education classes as far as national core curriculum classes that the national standard holds us to. So it covers different topics that they mandate that we cover every 2 years.
And your certification is up to date at this point, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
You mentioned that you're currently a lieutenant within the Canton Fire Department, is that correct?
Yes.
And how long have you been, have you had the rank of lieutenant?
I'm a temporary acting lieutenant, so I've been that since, I believe it was February, up till this time.
And within the town of Canton, how many fire station or firehouses do you have within Canton?
So we have 2 different stations, headquarters and Station 2, that we operate out of.
Do you work specifically in one, or does it sort of rotate between the two?
Depends on the rank. So as a firefighter, we would rotate through the different positions, or different stations. As the lieutenant, I'm the lieutenant right now at Station 1, so headquarters.
And where is Station 1 located?
99 Revere Street.
And with respect to each of the 2 station houses, how many sort of different vehicles and apparatus are located?
So we have, depends on what's obviously in service for mechanical issues and stuff, but we have a primary engine, a backup engine. We try to have at each station. We have 1 tanker truck, 2 ladder trucks. We have 2 primary ambulances and then a backup ambulance as well. So we try to have at least 1 engine, 1 ambulance, 1 ladder at each station, and then we'll have the backup pieces for that. And I believe our tanker truck right now, or our water truck, is out of Station 2.
And Station 2, where is that located?
7 Sassamon Street.
Now, as far as the sort of shift, how many people are assigned to, when you're assigned to, let me ask you this first. When you have a shift, what is,
Thank
what
you
hours
guys
is
so
that
much
shift
for
sort of,
joining. I appreciate you. Please comment, like, subscribe, and
So
share.
for shifting or shift work, it's 8 a.m. to 8 a.m. the next
Those
day.
of you
So we're
returning-
24-hour shifts.
Bless you. I
We have a
appreciate
24
it.
period off from work, another 24, and then we're off for 5 days.
And when you're assigned to a certain shift for that 24-hour period, are you assigned to sort of a specific duty or a truck, or how does that work?
We're usually just assigned to a specific position for either the 10-hour or the 14, depending on rotations, overtime, that kind of stuff. But we're usually assigned to an individual piece or individual position for that shift, at least, whether it's a day shift or the whole 24.
And so starting with just the ambulance, if you're assigned to the ambulance, how many people and what are the different roles in the ambulance?
So the ambulance, we would have 2 people assigned to the ambulance. We rotate either through seniority or through care level, whether paramedic, EMT. If you're both paramedics, then it would go by seniority, and swap back and forth for call volume and teching, who's in charge of the call. And then we would also cross man with the ladder as well. So depending on the call that comes in for service, we would either, on a fire call, we can take the ladder, medical call, we can take the ambulance.
And with respect to the engine, how is that sort of divvied up, or what are the different roles on an engine?
So with the engine, if we have a full staff of 13 members, we would have 4 people on the engine. If there's a couple people off vacation, that type of thing, we could do, it's the driver, the step, and then the lieutenant in charge of the engine.
Now, if I could turn your attention to January 28th, into the evening of January 28th into the morning of January 29th, were you working on that occasion?
Yes.
Okay, you were working 8 a.m. on the 28th until 8 a.m. on the 29th, is that correct?
That's correct.
And which firehouse were you working out of on that occasion?
I believe it was Station 1 at the time.
And what was your assignment in relation to that shift, whether it was ambulance, truck, or engine, whatever?
That would have been ambulance 1.
And who, if anyone else, was assigned to ambulance 1 along with you with that?
At that time, I was working with Matthew Leahy, not Leahy, sorry, Matthew Kelly. We have a lot of similar names.
And what, if any, disparity was there between sort of the experience that you had versus the experience that Mr. Kelly had at that time?
So Mr. Kelly had just started with the department at the BLS level at the EMTB, probably 2 or 3 months prior. I had just finished up his preceptorship, getting him onboarded as a new hire in EMT, so very minimal experience at that time.
Lower level.
So fair to say any sort of medical
Very
calls, you
basic.
would have been sort of what they call the lead paramedic, is that correct?
That's correct.
Now, with reference to that particular time frame, the 28th, 29th, what, if anything, were you aware of as far as sort of weather, forecast, that?
Yeah, so
We're going through the
leading into
same
that shift,
stuff.
I knew there was a storm coming, and I had always lived a good
You don't want
distance
me to
away
fast
from
forward
work.
through this?
So I would try and
No.
tie overtime shifts in so I wouldn't have to commute more than once back and forth. But with the storm coming, wanted to not have to drive into the weather. So I picked up overtime the night before that shift.
And about what time did you arrive the night before?
The night before I arrived at 6 p.m. 6 p.m. is the start of the shift.
And so you were essentially on shift for relatively significant period of time leading into the morning of the 29th, correct?
That's correct.
Not unusual for incumbent
And
workers.
you mentioned that there was a storm that was forecasted. What, if anything else, do you recall about sort of what type of storm or what was predicted?
Predicted it was going to be a pretty significant storm, heavy winds, heavy snow. Not something I wanted to drive in the morning. So if the opportunity arose, I took the overtime for that night.
What did it turn out to be as far as?
Exactly as predicted. We hadn't gotten much snow up until about midnight or so, and then snow developed since pretty much then on.
And in a moment, I'm going to ask you about a call around 6 a.m., but just if I could take you back a little bit before that, over sort of the overnight shift, did you have any dispatches or calls that you responded to, say, after midnight, but prior to 6 a.m.?
I don't believe so. I don't recall how many calls were prior to that. That one was kind of the key of the night.
So you mentioned sort of, what, if any, memory do you have as far as like sort of when it started to snow?
It would have been after 10 p.m. for sure, but I'm not sure exactly.
Now, turning your attention to a little bit after 6 a.m., you get a dispatch for a medical call, correct?
Correct.
And just prior to that, what about time did you sort of get up, rise, and sort of, start doing things around the station that day?
So shift change usually happens around 8 a.m. in the morning. It takes a while to get everything ready for normal business hours. We try and get the station prepped for public that come into the building or just people passing, going around. We try to prepare the sidewalks, the apron. So we get up around 5:30, if depending on call volume throughout the night. Sometimes we're up throughout the whole night. But we got up that morning around 5 to shovel, snow blow, salt the public walkways, that type of thing.
And specifically when it comes to the apron, that's sort of the area in front of the garage doors, is that correct?
That's correct.
And so why is it so important to sort of clear off the apron as far as snow is concerned?
So as far as in front of the apparatus doors, it's a very limited height clearance between the top of the fire apparatus and the actual garage bay doors. So a few inches of snow would be enough to cause us to bump into the ceiling of the apparatus garage doors.
And it would
So
be
we have to
less
keep that
safer, right,
relatively
in general,
almost bare to be able to pull the
skipping on
apparatus out
ice.
without causing any damage.
And about what time was it that, that you and the other firefighters at your station started to sort of clear off, whether it be the parking lot, the apron, or anything else as far as snow?
I'd say about 5:15, 5:30.
And at the time that you get this call, shortly after 6 a.m., about how much snow was on the ground at that point?
It's probably 4 to 6 inches.
And this dispatch that comes in shortly after 6 a.m., what was the dispatch in regard to it, and where were you dispatched to?
So we didn't have much information going out the door, just that there was a man on the side of the road. And we knew due to the weather, there could be a significant call. So
before I leave and depart on that just for 1 second, when it comes to when you're outside sort of shoveling off the apron and clearing some of the parking lot, in addition to the snow, what, if anything else, did you note as far as sort of the weather conditions, visibility, things like that?
So visibility was extremely poor. High winds, probably 20, 30 mile an hour winds. Temperature probably in the 20s with still actively snowing at that time.
And the winds, to the best of your recollection, was this something that was just sort of a gust, or was it sort of persistent?
Sustained winds and then probably gusts as well.
And so you received this dispatch, and you, I'm presuming, get in the ambulance and go, correct?
Correct.
Who, if anyone, is in the ambulance with you when you respond?
So responding in, I had myself, Matthew Kelly, and firefighter Nuttall had come in early as well to try and beat the storm and get in on time, because he was scheduled to come in at 8 a.m. that morning anyways. But with the heavy snow, wanted to make sure he could get in and be able to relieve the people coming off.
And within the ambulance, where was everybody sort of situated on route to the call?
I believe Matthew Kelly was driving, I was in the passenger seat, and Nuttall was in the back of the truck.
And as far as during the course of your going from Station 1 to the scene on Fairview Road, what, if anything, did you note as far as sort of the road conditions, visibility as you were driving?
So that neighborhood is actually relatively close to the station, so you normally get there in a couple minutes, but it was slow driving over there. So I remember going pretty slow to get over to the scene.
And as far as this particular time of day, what was sort of the lighting like at that point? Had the sun come up or anything like that?
Sun had not come up yet. It was still dark, heavy winds, heavy snow, so visibility was almost zero.
And as far as what, if any, other sort of apparatuses from your station were dispatched to this call as well at the same time?
So the other call would have been, or the other vehicle would have been engine 3, and just engine 3. Car 5 will sometimes go. That's the shift commander for the department, depending on the nature of the call, how it comes in, and the ambulance. So it would have been the 3 apparatus.
Do you recall who, if anyone, was in either car 5 or the engine?
So car 5 would have been, at the time, Captain Wendell Robery. And the engine, it would have been Frank Walsh, Katie McLaughlin, and the lieutenant for the engine was Greg Woodbury.
And you mentioned it took a little bit longer than without the weather to get to Fairview Road. Is that correct?
That's correct.
If you have any idea approximately how much time elapsed between the time that you received the call and the time that you arrived on?
I'd have to refer to the EMS report. That is going to be more accurate, but I believe it was 5 or 6 minutes.
And to that point, with any call, there's an EMS report that's prepared by, who is it prepared by?
So it's usually the person who texts the call or is in charge of the call. This was an ALS level call, so it would have been myself.
So you wrote as far as the report in relation to EMS arrival, and within that is contained sort of different times that things happen along the way, correct?
Correct.
And the times that are noted within that report, is that something that's noted as it's happening, or is that something that you go back and figure out at a later time?
So as we're going through the call and radio messages are sent, that's all documented on a third party that documents timestamps, things like that. As far as on scene, transport, clear from the hospital, that type of thing. It's all third party documented.
May I approach the witness, John?
Yes.
I'm showing you what's been marked as Exhibit 160.
Yeah, almost zero.
Typically turning to the 7th page and asking for direct your attention to the far right column.
Y'all
See
see me
that
looking
portion of
down.
the
I got my
report,
whoopers.
sir?
Lay
Yes.
down.
Okay, first and foremost, what I placed before you as Exhibit 160, that's your report, correct? Correct. Okay. And on that right column of the 7th page end, what, if anything, do you see with regard to times?
So we have our dispatch time, 6:06, en route time, 6:07, on scene, 6:14, at patient, 6:15, and we had transported from that scene at 6:27 and arrived at destination at the hospital, 6:45.
That destination hospital would have been Good Samaritan Medical Center, is that correct?
Correct.
Now, if you could, going back to sort of your dispatch from Station House to Fairview Road, can you describe sort of the path as far as what direction, what route you took to get from one to the other?
Yep, so from Revere Street, we'd have come out, taken a right onto Revere Street, gone to the end of that road, taken a left on Sherman, driven all the way up to Chapman Street, taken a right on Chapman Street, gone up to Fairview Street, and then taken a left on that. That would have brought us down to the address.
And as you're coming down Fairview, are you familiar with that area?
Yes.
That's a
And so
39
as you're
minute
coming down
total time.
Fairview,
with
is there any kind of grade or elevation to the roadway as you're coming down?
Yep, so that is a downhill towards about halfway down the road, so
Well,
a pretty
not
good
with
grade
patients
that's coming
and
downwards.
dispatch.
And the address that you responded to with 34 Fairview Road, when you're coming from the direction that you were coming off of Chapman, is that a residence that's on your left or right or something else?
That would have been on the left.
And when you arrive on scene, what, if any, other sort of vehicles or apparatuses do you observe beyond sort of what you've already described as a
So we had a fire apparatus. There was another vehicle, bystander vehicle, that was on scene as well. I don't recall if police were on scene at that time, but
And when you first sort of pull up to the scene, what, if anything, is it that you observe even prior to getting out of the truck or the ambulance?
so as we're pulling up to the scene, we see two female parties, non-uniformed personnel, that were going back and forth between the body and the side of the street and back and forth. Appeared to be a female party that was pushing on his chest and then going back and forth between the other female party and the patient.
And again, so when you first sort of pull up, you're able to see the body on the ground, is that correct?
It was, yeah, you could see a body, but it was very hard to see that distance away.
And do you recall any sort of like overhead or ambient lighting, street lighting or anything like that illuminating in that area?
I don't recall.
Now, this individual, as far as the person on the ground, at some point you were able to subsequently identify who that was, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, who did you identify him?
So identification won't normally happen right at that bedside. That's not really relevant to initial treatment. We found out who it was when we got into the ambulance and we were able to do a more thorough search once interventions had started.
But when you first arrive on scene, fair to say you're primarily or only sort of concerned with patient care, correct?
Yeah, correct.
To the point you sort of tunnel vision to the patient, correct? Yeah. So you arrive on scene and you get out of the ambulance and where is it that you go?
So we then go grab all the equipment that we're going to need to work on the patient, and then we bring that equipment over to the patient's side to be able to start treatment.
All right, Mr. Flematti, I'm going to stop you there. I'm going to stop you, Ms. Tillali. Jurors, that's it for today. We are not in session tomorrow.
Whoa!
Remind you, please do not discuss this case with anyone. Don't do any independent research or investigation into this case.
If you happen to see, hear, or read anything about the case, please
What?
disregard and let us know. We'll see you on Thursday morning, and Thursday will be a half day. Thank you very much.
All rise for the court, please.
What? This court is crazy. Y'all. Whoa. Y'all, this is crazy. Okay, that's it. No mas. That's all. Y'all, this is a little bit weird. So, no court Wednesday. See, this is different from the schedule we were told. We were told the schedule was going to be Monday, full day, Tuesday, half day, Wednesday, full day, Thursday, half day off Friday. So, I don't know what's going on. So, obviously, full day Monday, Tuesday, Thursday is half day. What about Friday? I mean, no wonder they're going to take 8 to 10 weeks to complete this entire process. This case, because I can't believe they have so many half days and off days with this court. So technically, you only have 3 full days a week. I guess they have other cases going on. I don't know, but that to me is weird. Y'all, nothing tomorrow. Well, it's okay. I mean, we all can take a little mental break, and I can get things, there's I've got a lot I gotta catch up on other things, but y'all. Okay, Sparkles, what did you think? What was your humble opinion? While I wait for your response, I think the only thing that really caught me off guard, which you very well probably saw, was the fact that when Karen Reed stopped doing CPR, nobody hopped on and continued, and that he was just left laying there until the EMT started up again. That to me is very disconcerting. The officer who was there on scene first should have assisted in the CPR and not just standing around. I mean, she is not trained in CPR. She doesn't know what the heck she's doing, but she's doing the best she can. That to me was crazy. And I agree with you, Sparkles. Shocked that the homeowners didn't come out of the house and one was first responder and they knew him. Well, I don't care how much they've been drinking. Somebody in that house is going to wake up. The amount of screaming that apparently Karen Reed was doing was enough for everybody to be alerted and all of the first responders to make an extreme note of that. And then you have all of the sirens. You have at least 12 first responders on scene, at least, between cops, fire, EMS, paramedics. I don't get it. Well, and they had a dog. That's right. That dog would have been barking bat crazy. There is no way in God's green earth a dog would not be barking up a storm with all of that commotion going on in their front yard. Just don't get it. I really hope that the defense, if she is innocent, nails that information down. And if they have Brian Albert and Nicole Albert testify, that they hammer them with that, because you would have to be almost intoxicated. You would have to be intoxicated almost to the point of alcohol poisoning not to wake up with all that commotion. I'm sorry. No, I'm not. I got to quit saying that. My son is right. Okay, guys, mods, we have off tomorrow. I will probably do a lot of background work and do timestamps and everything on my videos, either late today or tomorrow. And then I will see all of y'all Thursday morning, bright and early. I'm shocked that they're taking a whole Wednesday off. I'll be even more shocked if they take Friday off. Then it would only be 2 days, 2 full days, a quarter week. That's just so insane. I mirror that, Sparkles. Thank everybody for joining me. It's been an honor and a pleasure. And I hope y'all have a wonderful day off tomorrow. And we will see you again on Thursday. On Thursday. So with that, I bid you farewell. Have a blessed and good night.